Hello, hello. Welcome, everybody, to another Knights of Last Call live stream. I am Derek Melinda, your host, and your local friendly game master, I suppose. Just got done watching the D&D Direct trailer, and I'm not sure how to think about it. I guess we'll all have to tune in and see what the announcement is. I'm assuming it's going to be something involving some sort of digital something. And we'll have to go from there and see what they do. All right. Looks like everything's working, so that's great. How is everybody tonight? Yeah, it was a really short one, Casey, for sure. But, you know, we saw some things. That's for sure. I mean, I said that, you know, I had wondered what would an RPG look like if it was optimized for a digital experience, and maybe that's what we're going to find out in 2024. That would be very, very, very interesting. All right, well, who do we got here? We got Anthony, we got Ben, Josh, KC, London, Luigi, Steven, Total Entropy, William Brandis, Zogathor, Storm Phoenix, Damien. I don't think I missed anybody. Oh, London, I think, might be just laying floor. So, hey, London. Ruinsmith, what's up? Silverwolf, hey, how's it going? Welcome. So, yeah, not a bad week. Been doing my taxes, been trying to get things done. And, of course, getting ready for our next adventure path and getting ready for our next campaign, which is always very exciting, and I've been having fun with it. So very, very cool. 5e is becoming the Skyrim of TTRPGs. That's one way to look at it. It's definitely one way to look at it. Yeah, you know, yeah, Anthony, listen, let the smooth sounds of Dungeons & Dragons and Pathfinder ASMR drift you off to sleep. Your eyes are growing heavy as someone casts a hypnotize spell on you. All right. Yeah, well, it's my understanding. Well, it's funny because people talk about how big Pathfinder 2 is on Foundry, but something like, Pathfinder 2 is very large on Foundry, but it's still only like 15% of the games, right? Like the other, 80% or something of the games are 5th edition D&D. So it's not, it's much larger percentage wise, but it's still the small dog compared to 5e. All right, well, last time we talked about the occult spells of level 3, but we got a little bit disrupted because, we were talking about the Book of Dead. But no preview this week, and so we can just focus on that delicious, delicious occult spell list. Now, we only have 19, I think, to go, so it's a pretty short list. So that means, hopefully, we'll be able to, get through there, and then maybe it'll be a short stream, or maybe we can just talk about other things. So let's get to it. Let's get the business done first, okay? Then work first, play later, okay? All right. Well, here we are. Here we have been, and here we continue to be. We've got, a list here that has been brewing with a solid performance so far from the occult spell list here. One of the better, basically all of the great spells from Divine are represented here in the S tier and the A tier. And there's a solid amount of A spells, B spells, and a couple of S tiers to sort of, capstone it out. And we even had a couple of scroll spells, which we all thought were actually pretty well performers. So a lot of A's and B's. We've so far avoided the most humiliating grade, which is scroll case F, and only 4 Fs so far, and about half the list done. So it could be a good showing here for level 3 occult. So unless there are any objections, let's get into it. We've got Magical Fetters is our first spell up. It's from the Agents of Edge Watch Adventure Path. May contain spoilers, although I doubt that it does. And what do we got here? We got a 2-action, 60-foot spell. It targets a single creature and allows them a reflex saving throw. Manacles of ghostly nature, although that seems to mostly be flavor. Launch from your outstretched hand and clasp around the target's limb, impeding its movement. They make a reflex save. All right, well, what we've got here is either Clumsy 1 on a success and a -10 speed penalty for 1 round, or Clumsy 3 on a failure and a -10 status penalty to speed for 1 minute. And if they critically fail, not only are they Clumsy 3, they are Slowed 1. Now, I got to admit, the success condition is... it's okay. A lot of times let's judge these things on the floor and the ceiling, right? The floor is, okay. Obviously the floor is they critically succeed, nothing happens to them. But, what's going to happen if you cast this spell on, say, your higher level creature? Oh, I see the rub. I missed it. I was going to say, this spell seems incredible. I was like, this is a really powerful debuff. Did you miss it? I missed it. Yep. Ruinsmith's got it. Good catch, Runesmith. It is incapacitation. Damn it. I missed it. I was about to say, this might be A or S tier debuff, honestly. Because, gosh, Clumsy 3's, that's -3 penalty to reflex and armor class, and ranged attacks. -3 is a ton. And I think K Swistack's got it right. I think -1 tier for the incap. A solid B tier seems appropriate, and I like that because I also like that the 60-foot range with this -10-foot speed penalty is pretty good. It means that most creatures are probably going to have to spend. They probably won't be able to get to you, honestly, whether they succeed or they fail. And if a creature does critically fail this, again, it's in cap. but you know, with a minus 10-foot speed penalty and the slow, they are going to be basically, you could basically kite them around the whole battlefield. So again, I agree on the B. Ruinsmith agrees on the B. So I think K-Swiss deck nailed it there, and I think we're gonna have to go with a B. And I don't think that's, you know, undeserving. What's going on here? Something happened. Oh, I know what happened. Okay. There we go. So Magical Fetters goes right here next to Haste. Still a very solid, you know, a debuff, better than C. And yeah, I mean, I don't think you should feel bad about having this in your repertoire at all. And you know, if you were fighting a moderate encounter and you were going up against a creature that was, you know, on level or near level, and you happen to have this spell memorized, and the incapacitation effect wasn't going to be in effect, I mean, this spell is a solid banger. And yeah, I mean, I'd be, you know, again, if I was level 5 and I got access to this spell can affect a creature, even through the incapacitation, up to level 6. So if I was level 5 and I was fighting a level 6 monster with a couple other monsters, like it's kind of a mini boss, right? You know, I think that'd be a great debuff spell to hit on them. So, not horrible, but certainly more limited due to the incapacitation trait. And they recognize that because that would have been a very powerful debuff for sure. All right, our next spell is Mind Reading, an arcane and occult spell. We've got a 30-foot range here. I don't like this new Archives of Nethys thing. I don't like that. Is that something I can change? Oh, yes, I can. Wow. All right. Good job. You could turn off the on hover. That's good. All right. Well, this is obviously it's not really a combat spell here, but what do we got for mind reading? This could be a really cool spell, right? Divination and detection. 30-foot range, and you have to touch, you know, mentally reach out to a creature, and it has to make a will save. And then it becomes immune for 1 hour. So you can't just spam this, basically, against a person or a foe. And what happens if, let's take a look here. If they succeed, you find out if their intelligence modifier is higher, lower, or equal to yours than yours. Is that even useful? Okay. That's such a weird information to give away. I'm not saying it's like bad. I mean, it's useless for the most part. It's just a weird thing to give. If they fail the save, you perceive vague surface thoughts from the target when you cast the spell, and you find out whether its intelligence modifier is higher than, equal to, or lower than yours. Vague surface thoughts. Okay. So if they critically fail, it's as failure, and for the duration of the spell, you can sustain it to detect the target's surface thoughts again. But it's only a 30-foot range, and usually in Pathfinder 2, you can't cast a spell, you know, stealthily, right? Creatures typically know that they are being spelled upon. So this is kind of a weird spell. I mean, for starters, vague surface thoughts doesn't really imply a whole lot of information. I mean, I feel like Zolgathor, I think, got it right. This is one of those only as powerful as the GM allows it to be spells. For example, if you cast this spell in my campaign and the creature failed the will save, I would essentially allow you to read the creature's mind, right? Like what is it thinking? You know, what has it been thinking about, right? Like, you could learn what you need to know. And if they critically failed, you would just go full Professor X on them, right? Like, you could drill into their mind, and you could, like, actively search out information that was locked away inside their head. So, you know, it does what it says it does, but I just feel like, as written, and the way that probably most people would play this, it's not really that great. I mean, even if it is silent spell, it still has a verbal and somatic component. So you would still be doing this like, whoa, like, I mean, I think for the most part, they're going to know that you're casting the spell. Yeah, I think you would need something more like Conceal Spell. This is a weird spell. I mean, it's going to be on a scroll. I'm tempted to actually put this spell... I could be tempted to go D or C because it does what it says it does. It just does it very poorly, which is almost borderline D, really. But, you know, in the right situation, I suppose a C isn't completely unwarranted. And so we'll give it a C. D for disappointment. Fair enough. Oh, okay. Chat's saying it's a D. All right. You know what? Listen there, all you haters. I tried to give a spell a C, and chat was the one saying it needs to be a D, okay? Everyone's always poo-pooing on me, saying that I'm a negative Nancy. It's 3 Ds in a row from the chat, by the way. D, D, and D. So, yeah. Oh, Luke said it too. He said CD, so he was like me. But still, I'm just saying, as written, it's a D. Agreed. As written, it's a D. At my table, it would probably play, honestly, more like a CB, and I also probably would let you cast the spell from a greater range and do it very subtly. So, you know, that's a whole other thing. I mean, it's mind reading, right? We all fundamentally understand what we want that spell to be like and what we want that spell to do. Yeah. Right, exactly. All right, well, our next spell is sort of the opposite of that, which is non-detection. So we've got a 10 minutes cast, but it basically, I like that you can target a creature or an object. It does not have a heighten. K-Swiss deck. Non-detection lasts for 8 hours, one creature or object. Okay, so the first thing I want to say is this spell should just be until your next daily preparations. If I am trying to ward myself from detection, that's a fairly, let's be clear, that's a pretty specific problem that you're having, that you are worried about people being able to scry on you. It should just last all day. I shouldn't have to cast the spell 3 times. It should just last. And more importantly, if it lasted 24 hours or until your next daily preparations, then when you prepare your spells, you can choose to not basically lower that spell. Basically lock that level 3 slot out, basically for the end of time, and essentially you'll keep up a non-detection. I think that's very reasonable. So I think that's pretty good. But especially because we're playing Pathfinder 2, and non-detection does not make you non-detectable. Instead, what it does is it attempts to counteract all detection, revelation, and scrying divinations made against the target or the target's gear throughout the duration. Successfully counteracting a divination that targets an area or multiple targets negates the effect only for that target. Meaning that as you get higher levels, you have to heighten this anyways if you really want it to do anything. And more importantly, someone could say, aha, I know that the evil wizard is going to be spying on us and using his magical scrying mirror to find us. I'm going to take four copies of non-detection to cast it on you and you and you and me, so the entire party is protected from scrying. And then we're going to go to the Lich's thing. And then you get there, and there's an ambush waiting for you. And you go, what the hell happened? And he goes, well, he tried to scry on you. And, well, he's higher level than you, so your non-detection didn't work. Cool. Glad I don't have any fireballs, haste, or slow spells. Can I say? I don't know. Yeah. So, I mean, it gets kind of a ding on the duration. I could live with the duration, honestly, if it was, like, guaranteed. But, you know, counteracts is just, yeah. I mean, it's not an F, Steven, because it does function. It functions within the framework of Pathfinder 2 as we understand the framework of Pathfinder 2. But it is definitely a D. I mean, it could be like a D wand, I guess. probably it's wandable. No, because you don't need to be non-detected every day, and it only lasts for 8 hours. So the other 16 of the hours of the day, you're not. Yeah, it's just D. Matthew Bruns says D as well. Well, Luke, this is the exact problem. I was getting into something with someone in my comments from a while ago, where it was from like a primal list, where I was talking about why I thought the remove spells were poorly designed. And they said that I was, I'm becoming edgy and it's boring, and, a lot of other people have noticed it too, and it feels like I'm just here to shit on the system. Well, no, I'm just critiquing bad design. I mean, that's all. Like, I'm sorry that those spells don't do what they say they're going to do. And I think part of it comes from a failure to understand game design principles, which is, again, like, for example, what is stronger, right? The offensive measure or the defensive measure? Well, the offensive measure, because the offensive measure can win you or accomplish your goal. The defensive measure is only there to counteract the offensive measure. So unless the defensive measure is markedly stronger than the offensive measure, it is almost always better to take the offensive measure. So, and the idea that, you would take this spell and cast it on a bunch of things and then only discover that it didn't work at all, it's very non-intuitive, I suppose, is what I was going to say. A spell like this with the desired effect, but unreliable, and you don't know that if it failed, can you really say that it does its job? That's true. I don't even know if because you're not trying to counteract. The spell is trying to counteract. So my guess is you don't know that you're even being scryed upon. Min Andreas says it's an F. No, I don't think it's an F. Just because, again, it functions within the context of, like, we didn't put remove into D or to F, because just because something has a counteract check doesn't mean that the spell doesn't function. It does function. It just functions under what we understand is the framework of Pathfinder 2. It placebos you into think that the fact that you don't know that you even failed makes it really punishing. I agree with all of those things. So, all right. Well, because realize, too, that when you take a spell like remove, already you're in a weird spot, right? Because if I take remove fear, does that mean that I want the group to encounter fear because I think it's going to be useful, right? So already, if you don't encounter fear, that spell slot is entirely wasted, right? And so already you're taking a gamble. You're taking a risk just by prepping the spell. So you're already sort of down, right? You're already, when you set yourself into a defensive position, you are already weak, because if your opponent doesn't utilize that defense, then you're already in a disadvantaged position. But what's worse is when your defensive position is actually weaker than their offensive option to begin with. So, yeah. Anthony, frightened is a pretty common condition. That is true. I will bow to that. So, remove fear is probably, of the spells, the most reasonable one. But I don't think it's actually all that reasonable, to be honest with you. Just because, again, because of those things. Okay. So I like D for non-detection. All right, we got a new one, and I don't know about what this spell is. Ownerik? Ownerik Meyer? I don't know that I know that word, actually. Ownerik. Let's take a look. What the... Ownerik. Relating to dreams or dreaming? Interesting. Okay. So it's an illusion, mental. Lou got it right. Illusion, mental, visual. So there's a lot of stuff going on here. We've got a 3-action spell. That's a ding against it, unless it's particularly great. Although I like 120 feet, and I like 20-foot bursts, and I like 1 minute. You make the ground look like deep mire or quicksand. Ground in the area is difficult terrain. All right. Each creature in the area, when the spell is cast, or if it enters, must make a will save, and on a failure, it believes. So that seems to be just given. You make this area difficult terrain. That seems good. Each creature in the area when the spell is cast, or that enters it, must make a will save. On a failure, it believes it's being sucked down into the earth, and it has a minus 10-foot circumstance penalties to its speed. So minus 10 circumstance penalty to your speed plus difficult terrain is quite a bit of slowing. On a critical failure, it becomes immobilized. All right. In addition to the normal actions to escape, at the end of an affected creature's turn, it can attempt a will save, removing the effects on a success. And a critical success on any will save made against the Ownerik Mire. The creature fully disbelieves the illusion. It no longer makes a will save, although the area is still considered difficult terrain. So it's a massive speed penalty, and between difficult terrain and the speed debuff. They can attempt to escape, but at the end of the turn, each creature, and when it is cast or that it enters the area. So yeah, I mean that's pretty good. Well, actually, Luke, I don't know if it's repeated. It says, in addition to the normal actions to escape, at the end of an affected creature's turn, it can attempt a will save, removing the effects on a success, which means if you succeeded and you're not affected by it, you would choose not to make the will save and thus would not. So it is repeated, but only in the bad way. It is only repeated if you basically have already failed to it. So this spell, it's pretty good. I mean, obviously just bring back Create Pit. I like that. Yes. Also, going back to what we said earlier, Ryan, I do agree with you. Non-detection, it's just the opportunity cost. It's not just about the spell itself. It's about the spells that you're not taking by taking that spell. So I agree. Is this just Entangle with a weird name? Maybe. I mean, I'm tempted to just say that the spell is okay. I mean, it's 40 feet of difficult terrain, automatic, and at 120-foot range, and potentially then with a minus 10-foot circumstance penalty. Obviously, it's mental, so it's not going to affect creatures that are mindless. I don't know. I think it's like a C. It only affects the ground, so it's not going to help you against any sort of flying creature, but regardless, even if they critically succeed, they still get the difficult terrain. So yeah, I think it seems fine. All right, we've got a polymorph spell coming up. Ooze form. And remember, polymorph spells, you can only have one effect on you at a time. Otherwise, it tries to counteract the other one. But this is sort of your battle form type spells. You become some sort of black pudding or gelatinous cube or ochre jelly or gray ooze. Let's see what you get here. So you're casting this at level 3. It heightens a bunch. Let's see if this makes you pretty competitive. So it's going to give you AC equal to 7 plus your level. So that's baseline 5, right, which was what we would expect, plus trained. So it gives you basically, the martial characters, because they're probably going to be trained and at their full baseline of 5, and they might have like a +1 potency rune. So like most of your martial characters are probably going to have 8 plus their level at around level 5 or so when you get access to this spell. So the AC is, it's kind of competitive. It's not great. It's a pretty good chunk of temporary hit points, though. I gotta admit that. That's pretty good. You get immunity to crits. That's pretty good. Precision and visual effects. Get the hell out of here, Ownerik Meyer. We just found a spell that beats you. You get resistance 5 to acid, piercing, and slashing. Hey, thanks for the super chat, Self-Confessed Cynic. Do we get one over here as well? Some people do. My company is pretty awesome and gives us Good Friday off. And so I am going to enjoy a long weekend as well. And I am pretty excited about it. So that's great. So yes, thank you, Self-Confessed Cynic. We appreciate it. I look forward to seeing what emojis you recommend for our YouTube memberships. We'll probably definitely put a mammoth in. Let's talk about this really quick. That's really good resistance. On top of 20 temporary HP, on top of a pretty good AC. No, you don't have any vision, but you gain basically motion sense within 30 feet, and it is precise. That's also pretty good. Minandreas, isn't that AC really bad? I'm going crazy. Well, okay, remember, you're probably casting this spell at level 5. Okay? And most characters at level 5 are going to be trained, and they're going to have 5 points of AC from the combination of their armor plus their dex. So most characters, and then they might have an additional +1 from having a +1 item bonus to their armor through a potency rune. So characters like a fighter or whatever like that would probably have level +8 AC. So gaining AC 7 isn't bad. 7 plus level. So if you're a level 5 wizard and you cast this spell, you get AC 22. That doesn't seem horrible to me. But immunity to crits, immunity to precision damage, piercing, and slashing resistance 5. That's pretty great. You become trained, and your attack modifier is +14. So let's... Oh. You don't add the 10. Is that true? Oh. Okay. Well then, okay, that is bad. All right. Okay, never mind. Your AC becomes horrible. I was about to say, this is the most busted thing I've ever seen in my life. I see. Your AC straight out becomes 12. Got it. Okay. But you can't be crits. And you take 5 off from everything but bludgeoning. And you have 20 temporary hit points. Okay. Okay, that's a lot. Okay, I thought this was about to be the most absurd defensive bonus in the game. But that's still not... I mean, it's way worse than I thought it was. But it's still pretty okay. Ironically, this is probably better against a boss-type monster who is probably going to crit you anyways. And so the fact that he's going to hit you every time doesn't really make a difference because he's probably going to hit you anyways. And now he's just going to hit you and it's going to be definitely a crit, but you can't be crit, so it's just going to be a regular hit. So, yeah. Okay. And let's think about this. Like a striking, I know fighters are a bad example of this, but like, a fighter might be doing like what? Like 2 weapon damage plus maybe 6 or something like that about that level. So like if you had like a maul or something, or a maul would be a big example, a great sword, you would be doing 2d12 plus 6. So you would be doing something around the neighborhood of 19 points of damage. So -5, you'd be taking 14. And that's like with a big, two-handed weapon. If you were using a one-handed weapon that was doing d8, it would be 9 plus 6, you'd be doing 15. -5, you'd be taking 10 a hit. And you have 20 temporary hit points. I don't know. It's all right. All right. You get an attack modifier +14, yada, yada, yada. All right. What do you gain? Well, if you are a black pudding, you get a climb speed, and you get a pseudopod that does 2d6 plus 5 bludgeoning plus d8 acid. That's not bad. We just talked about the damage expression. So that's pretty comparative. Oh, by the way, let's talk about this. At level 5, a barbarian with a +1 item rune, his strength would be 19. He'd have 4. So that's 5. He'd be level 5, 10. He's now expert. he would have a plus 14 attack bonus. The fighter, of course, would have a plus 16 attack bonus. So this basically gives you the same attack bonus as a barbarian or a champion or a monk or anybody but a fighter or a gunslinger would have an attack bonus of 14. So in terms of attacking, you're right there with them. And dealing 2d6 plus 5 plus d8 acid is not bad. Let's see, a gelatinous cube does a lot less damage, but they have to make a fortitude save or be stunned 1 or paralyzed 1. It does have the incapacitation trait, but that's still pretty okay. The gray ooze, they all okay, the gelatinous cube doesn't climb. This thing climbs and swims. It does 1d6 plus 5 bludgeoning and 1d6 acid. So not as much damage as the black pudding. Black pudding seems to be your deeps, right? With this 2d6 plus 5 plus d8. Gelatinous cube has a pretty good control kind of aspect with potentially stunning them. The gray ooze can follow up with a grab action, which is great. Automatic grabbing, that's not bad. And lastly, the ochre jelly adds on an additional resistance to 5 to electricity. Probably not going to be that relevant, but it does kind of mid-range damage and can grab. So, you know, there's a lot of different options here. And it heightens and pretty much just scales up the way you would expect it to scale up. If you take it all the way at level 8, you've battled through planes, and now you're at the very pinnacle of existence, and you become a gargantuan 20-foot by 20-foot gigantic ooze. This is what it has come to. Anytime, don't get me wrong, I love this spell. I think it's fun. Look at all these cool options. They're not all the same. They actually do different things. They could be used in different circumstances. It gives you an athletics of 14. It gives you an attack of 14 that's competitive for the level. It gives you a lot of cool abilities. It changes the way you are going to play the game because it's going to make your AC shit, but it's going to give you all this temporary hit points, yada, yada, yada. I like this spell a lot, but let me just be clear when I say this. I mean, spells like this are why I play Dungeons and Dragons or Pathfinder. I do not play them for the epic storytelling, okay? I do not, when Gandalf fought the Balrog on the bridge of Khazad-dûm, he did not polymorph into a gargantuan gelatinous cube, engulf the Balrog, and then fling himself off of the bridge into the gap below, okay? But in D&D, that is exactly what would happen, okay? And that is awesome for its own right and its own way. So, you know, this spell and why it's so stupid and zany and silly and fun, and yet here's the key. It's still competitive. Is this going to be some broken thing that's going to ruin your game? No, but they made a good job, personally, I feel, with a lot of these battle forms at hitting the right bonuses and the right, you know, amount of hit points or whatever to actually make them feel competitive and different. I really like this spell. I think this, in the right fight, this could be a really powerful effect. And again, this is just classic D&D Pathfinder, just zany stuff. And I love it. I kind of love it. What are we thinking here? You know what? Screw it. It's got on level. It's got a lot of cool abilities. It makes you randomly immune to a bunch of stuff that could actually make a lot of big differences. And I don't know. I'm gonna say A, just because it's fun too. So, well, Booth B, that isn't the game's fault. That's your dice fault. You got to put them in a dice jail, as Bob would say. Even though I think those things are silly. And I agree, Eon Ryder. D&D can be bizarre and campy. And if you go back to the very beginning in the 1970s, there were elements there of crash-landed spaceships and, you know, just weird stuff. Weird, crazy, weird stuff. So I do like it. All right. That's fun. Painted a scout. Oh, there's Bob. Hey, Bob. All right, Painted Scout. Oh, we have a spoiler. We have a spoiler for an adventure path that we ourselves are going to be playing. Knights of Last Call, look away. All right, we have a divination scrying spell. It is 3 action touch, but you have to target a cave wall or other stone surface. Okay, so obviously we get the image of what's going on here. You cause hand-drawn scouts to spread out from your fingers, and as long as you keep your hand on the wall, these painted scouts can move down using senses that you have, whether it's scent or dark vision or magical effects like see invisibility. They can move your speed. They can go anywhere up to a range of 120 feet. Look at this is Pathfinder 2 to a T. We're talking about magical cave drawings running along the walls scouting for you. But it's important to note that every time you sustain, they can move, and the scout can move anywhere, but it treats sharp corners and particularly craggy spots on the wall as difficult terrain. If at any point someone in your game should cast this, and you start figuring out the difficult terrainness of the spread of this spell, taking into account particularly craggy spots or sharp corners, okay, you need to seriously reconsider what it is that you are doing in your role-playing games, okay? You can spend an action to make the scout hide or sneak, and you get to use nature or occultism in place of that check, but it must be near a suitable obscured nook or cranny to hide, yada, 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 yada. This spell is, I thought this spell is flavor riddled with mechanics. Like, hey, do you want some mechanics with your flavor? I mean, obviously the flavor of this spell is off the charts. And especially given the context of Quest for the Frozen Flame, which we understand takes place in the realm of the Mammoth Lords and has sort of a primitive, tribal nature to it. And the idea of someone, causing cave paintings to come to life and move along the walls of a cave or of a thing and scout for you is awesome. But why do we need all of this nonsense mechanics? Like, this is just so unnecessary, Well, Damian Williams, aka Pawn No Longer. I mean, we already see that the spell is uncommon because it could do exactly that, right? Like, a player might be able to use it and get information, and if a player has information, that could be problematic for, DM story time. So, yeah, Case Ristek, yes, I have a separate map for the face of the mountains with its nooks and crannies. God forbid you try to use this thing on an English muffin. You won't get anywhere. Womp, 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 womp. All right. All right. It's a cool spell. It's going to go in the scroll case, and I'm going to put it at C. It's probably in the same design as far as sight. Actually, the spell itself actually probably could work really cool. It actually even heightens, which I think is really cool. Taking you up to 500 feet, you can create 5 scouts at once, and you're sort of sending these sort of prying eyes out into the dungeon. That's pretty cool. And I think Anthony said it best here with, I appreciate how robust PF2 is with the rules, but seriously, it's okay. It's just okay. It's okay to leave some stuff up to the GM to figure out. Isn't it uncommon because it's from an AP? It probably is uncommon because it's from an AP, Joshua, but we have seen time and time and time again that pretty much every divination spell that allows you to see or perceive far away or whatever is uncommon because they want DMs to be able to decide whether or not that's something they want in their games. And technically by default, everything could be in, as the GM's discretion. But this is particularly calling out that, hey, you might not have accounted for this and it might screw up your plans for your perfect story. And the players didn't do what they were supposed to do. So I don't know. I think the spell's okay. I mean, it's not great. It's C. Anthony, that's correct. Exactly right. All right. Paralyze. Paolo lies? Paolo lies? All right, we've got Paralyze, and this is it's honestly a pretty great spell. This is the sort of will save incap ender. It has incapacitation. We know that. It has mental. We know that. So it's not working on your mindless creatures. Short range, 2 actions, but what it does really well. Even if they succeed, they are stunned 1. So even against a boss type creature, if their will save is arguably bad, but you still expect them to pass the save because of incapacitation. Think of it this way: if you're fighting one monster, there are 4 PCs. Each PC gets 3 actions, so the party represents 12 actions. Well, against the boss, it's like each of their actions has to be worth 4 actions in order for it to be a balanced fight, right? Like you have 12 actions, they have only 3 actions. So each of those actions virtually has to be worth 4 equivalent actions in order for the game to work. And that's why bosses have such powerful attacks and all that other stuff. Because again, those actions really, really have to keep out. This, by the way, why making a boss do something like stride is so valuable, because a boss doesn't stride better than you do, If every creature that was higher level than you got to move 50 feet or 60 feet with a stride, then we would be talking something different. So if they pass the save, if they fail the save, then they become stun 1. And that means virtually you have traded 2 actions for one of the boss's actions. And one of the boss's actions, we just said, it's like it's worth 4 of yours. And so fundamentally, you've done a great trade. And of course, if the creature fails, and of course, again, it has incapacitation, they're paralyzed for 1 round. They lose all of their actions. That's just, devastating, game over. And if they critically fail, they're paralyzed for potentially multiple rounds, although they get a new save to break out each time. And then it heightens to an absurd degree at level 7, where you can try to mass paralyze. So not only does the spell obviously still have some value against bosses, it's also the case that against equivalent or monsters, on-level monsters, or maybe a monster that's 1 level higher than you, or lower-level monsters, it could be a brutal way. It is a save or swim spell, sink or swim, or whatever you want to call it, save or die, basically. But it's Pathfinder 2-5, which means it doesn't automatically end the fight. And because it's incapacitation, it is not going to be something that you can rely on to just cast to the boss, they fail, and now they're out. That being said, even if the boss, and of course, if the boss passes their will save, it gets upgraded to a critical success, and they are unaffected. So it's pretty good. I mean, it's, Anthony, I probably wouldn't use it on a PL at -1 monster either. But, at the same time, they're the ones who are most likely to fail or critical fail. And if you can just take a monster out of the equation, maybe that's worthwhile. I don't know. It has all of the pros and the cons that a spell like incapacitation, any spell like this that has. But, but the power effects are very, noticeable. Anthony, when Pathfinder 2 first released, I created a post on the Paizo forums called Incapacitation, a solution in search of a problem. And at the time, it was like one of the most numerical, or had the most posts of any post, had the most pages, had the most of anything on the Paizo Pathfinder 2 forum. And I basically argued that in Pathfinder 2, creatures that are higher level than you already get a significant bonus to their saves. So a creature that already had a 50% chance of succeeding, if they were on level with you, they have a 75% chance of succeeding because they're a couple levels higher than you. So that's number 1. They're already much more likely to succeed. And number 2, they locked out all of the very worst conditions into the critical failure slot. So a high-level monster was only going to critically fail on a nat 1. And I argued that that was okay. Having a 5% chance that a monster critically failed is probably okay. And so I argued that adding incapacitation on top of that just seemed unnecessary. I still pretty much feel that way. But it is what it is. So what do we think for Paralyze? I don't think it's A tier because of the incapacitation. But is it B or is it C? Joshua, you do that at your own risk. I mean, here's what's going to happen if you get rid of incapacitation. more of your high level fights are going to be decided by a spell. So that's the end of it. Jason B.
Jason B tipped $10. Super excited for D&D Direct. Looking forward to selling all of our adventures there, to convert people back to PF2 of course. Once they see the incredible writing, not to mention the spells, they will flock to our game in the half dozens, you see.
This is very true. Jason Jason with a well-reasoned line of argument. Can't fight with that. All right, well, I'm gonna end the poll because it seems like it is a slam dunk in what we are going to be rating this thing as, and it is very solidly a B. All right, I am 100% in alignment with that. I think it's a powerful effect. I think it would be A. It would be S tier if it wasn't for incapacitation. But this is one of those spells that incapacitation is so powerful it almost lowers it by 2. So I think that way. So Anthony, one of the proposals that I made is that all of the worst effects be locked out at critical failure. And I argue that incapacitation should just say that if incapacitation does arise, if you would roll a critical failure in any circumstance, even on a nat 1, that it is treated as a failure instead. And that way, you don't even have that 5% outside bullshit chance that your, whatever, monster, or your big boss, or even a player, gets just one shot by this creature, from this one spell. And that is what I argued should be the case, that it should just increase critical failures regardless of how it occurred, whether it's because they rolled a nat 1 or whatever, and then it becomes a failure. But you would still let them fail normally. And you might say, okay, well, yeah, but remember, these creatures have like a 75% chance of succeeding or critically succeeding. So they're still only going to fail maybe 20% of the time, and maybe even less if that's their good save. And if it's their bad save, maybe they'll fail 30% of the time or 25% of the time. So, and it is me cashing in 2 actions. Now, the issue, Anthony, is that with that ruling, you could use your level 3 Paralyze, and you could use it against a boss even when you're levels 5 or 6 or 7. But that's true anyways. So I don't actually feel like that's that, much of a deal. I mean, I think for something like Paralyze, I don't know. I mean, you might even say something like, I'm okay with it. I don't know. I'm weird. I'm fine with it. If my players paralyze a boss because they took a cool spell and the creature rolled poorly and the creature's paralyzed for 1 round and the party can kill them in that one round, I'm fine with it. Look, if you change the incapacitation rules to even be a little bit thing, it is going to come up where a creature, your boss, is going to fail the save and, they're going to be paralyzed for a round. And yeah, maybe they're going to get raffle stomped. And I don't know. I'm okay accepting that versus the alternative, which is you're kind of like just disappointed most of the time. All right. What's next? Perseus's Precautions. This is from the Pathfinder Society Guide. It is an uncommon divination fortune prediction spell. So that's like everything that you could possibly get. It means it's going to be in the near future. It means it is going to be a fortune effect. It's going to let you reroll, and it's divination, and it's uncommon. So it's 3 actions, and it lasts 10 minutes after touch. Once during the duration of this spell, the target can roll 1 perception, arcana, crafting, lore, occultism, or society initiative roll twice and take the better result, after which the spell ends. The strain. I love when Pathfinder 2 explains what is clearly a game balance mechanic, but then they feel compelled. They don't do it all the time. There's nothing in the core rulebook which explains why battle medicine can only be used once every 24 hours on a topic.
GM's got tipped $25. If someone's willing to give up a 3rd level spell slot each day, I'd allow it to last all day or until used.
That's correct, GM Scott. Thank you for the tip, and that's exactly right. If someone's gonna use that, give up that precious slot, let them have what they want. So I'm 100% on board with you. But I thank you again for the generous tip, GM Scott. You're always very, very good to the channel. The strain of staying so prepared is too much for a mind to handle for long. The target becomes immune to this spell for 24 hours once the spell ends, whether they got the benefits or not. So with Battlefield Medicine, they don't explain why you can be used every once in 24 hours. But it's funny to me when they do decide, this is obviously a game balance thing, but Ian Ryder is asking the real questions, and Anthony is asking the real balance issues. Why? This is hilariously niche. How often is someone rolling crafting for initiative? Okay. Why is this only a 10-minute duration? I mean, look, I've rolled some really weird stuff for initiative, right? I encourage people to look outside of just perception. In fact, I would say that at my table or when I play at Aaron's tables on Fridays, we roll outside of what we would normally consider to be, we almost never roll perception. I'm rolling religion. I'm rolling all sorts of stuff for initiative all the time, which is fine. But, and to be clear, this lets you use perception, which is your default. But why is it only 10 minutes? And, you know, why is it only, why does it break after 24 hours? So, no. It's saying if you were to roll a Arcana, Crafting, Lore, Occultism, or Society initiative, then you get to roll twice. Oh yeah, GM Scott, that's exactly what you should be doing. Let the Barbarian roll Athletics for initiative when he kicked in the door. You know, I in a combat, if I like pull out a scroll and I say I'm going to be ready to cast a spell, Aaron will say roll in religion for initiative, right? If I sensed undead through a spell, and I said I'm going to continue to detect them, I rolled religion for initiative. You know, I'm a big believer in using the other skills for initiative. I think it's fun. And again, it's all balanced. They're all tied to the same thing. You're not breaking anything. It's not like they're going to go twice in the first round. Like you could still only get to go once. Yeah, and also, why is this spell just you roll twice on initiative once? I'm in 100% agreement with all of these things. And Matthew says it's a C wand. It's only usable. It lasts for 10 minutes. Matthew, I don't know if I agree with that. I don't think this spell is very good. Why is this third level? Yeah, I don't like this spell. I'm gonna preempt everybody here, and I'm gonna say that this is a D. I'm not gonna put it into a wand. I don't think you would want to cast the spell as a wand. I could give it a D at best. Okay. Wow, Brutus says a Q. Yeah, it's usable. It's not, a spell doesn't do nothing like some of our F tier spells, but my God, it's pretty weak sauce. Is this the one that we've been waiting for? No, Phantom Prison. Well, we're in a cult. You can tell that. We've got an illusion, mental, visual, and incapacitation. So this thing can't work against anything in the game, okay? If the creature's blind, forget about it. If the creature's mindless, forget about it. If the creature has higher level than you, forget about it. Okay, now that we've established that, this is a 3-action spell that has a range of 50 feet. That's weird. I don't think we normally... Do we ever see ranges of 50 feet? I know we've seen 30, we've seen 60, we've seen 120. Have we ever seen 50 feet? Am I the only one that thinks that that's really weird? I think it's weird. It lasts for a minute. You completely surround a large or smaller creature in illusory walls, trapping it inside of a prison. It cannot escape.
Bennett tipped $20.
Hey, Benny.
Ahoy. Time to hoist the sails and be bound for the 7th sea. Drink and the devil be done to ye. Too many community games, not enough time. Have a great stream.
Thank you very much, Ben. Enjoy your 7th Sea game. I look forward to hearing how it goes in the mystical, magical world of Thea. I'm not actually sure how you pronounce it, but it's a great system. I started looking through it the other day, and I still have to finish it, but I am enjoying it. And, you know, what can you say about John Wick? You know, he's a smart man. He knows how to write a cool game. Love it. Very cool. Thank you, Ben. Appreciate it. Have fun. Okay, so you're surrounding a creature in walls. It can't escape. no one else can see or feel the walls, and the target can't see anything outside of the walls. It can attempt a will save when the spell is cast, or each time it attempts to escape with or interact with the walls, and each time something from outside the walls affects the target. So basically, if you attack it, it gets to make a will save. If it tries to move, it gets to make a will save. If someone of its own side pokes it, it gets to make a will save. And on a success, it disbelieves the illusion and the spell ends. But it has incapacitation, which means if it fails, if the creature's higher level than you, or higher level than the spell level doubled, then on a failure, it would be a success, which would be a disbelief. And then you can heighten it, not +4 levels, but +5 levels to heighten 8, and then you can target 5 creatures. This is Mez, but with a lot more effort and a lot less effect. Why don't they just say the creature is immobilized? Well, because it cannot see or feel the walls, and it cannot see anything outside the walls. Now, here's what's interesting about Pathfinder 2. If I am surrounded by walls, I can't see anything outside of them, but they are illusory walls. So I could theoretically still make attacks against someone who is next to me. I would just get a DC 11 flat check because I couldn't see them, and they would be hidden to me. But I could actually attack them. And when I attack them, technically I would get to make a will save because I am interacting with the walls. Thoughts? Am I being a rules lawyer there? That's probably the way it's intended. I mean, of course, the idea here is that the creature thinks that it is completely surrounded by real walls. Okay, right? So when it first gets cast, the creature, ignore incapacitation. Let's just ignore that for a second. The creature thinks, boom, 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 boom. 4 ironclad walls of adamantine steel have descended upon me. I am trapped within these illusory walls. Okay, cool. But then someone that I was just fighting stabs me through the wall. I saw that happen. Right? Now I get to make a will save, but even if I fail that will save, what does that mean? You know, if you were a player and I told you that you were suddenly surrounded by an iron prison, and you were like, oh shit, I'm trapped in an iron prison. And then I was like, okay, and then the giant club smashes you in the face from outside of the iron walls, passing right through it. And you go, oh, I guess it's an illusion. Make a will save. And I go, all right, cool, make a will save. You're like, I fail. And I'm like, okay, you still think the walls are real. And you're like, okay, well, so you still can't escape and you still can't see out of them. You're like, okay, but I understand that these are illusionary, right? So it's very weird. Yeah, what happens when the troll smacks its club against the illusory wall? Does it just go through? So, but I know the wall isn't real. Now, here's where the key is. It is a mental illusion, right? It's not just a visual illusion. Actually, I don't know why it's a visual illusion at all. It should only be mental because no one else can see the walls, and it's clearly just inside of your brain. So why does this even have the visual trait? It's very strange. But it has incapacitation, and obviously this could really lock down a creature. I guess total entropy is right. You just rationalize that you got hit through the wall. You know what's funny about this? You know what this spell completely reminds me of? The illusory wall spell from, you guessed it, 4th edition. And I remember when we played 4th edition D&D, we had this very famous fight where I think it was a bard cast an illusionary wall spell across the middle of a fight. Now, everybody else knew that the illusionary wall was fake, the party and stuff. Well, there's a creature on the other side of the illusionary wall, which had failed its will save, and so it thought the wall was real. But then a fighter, okay, from the other side of the illusionary wall, shot the creature with a bow and hit it. So not only did the creature just see an arrow shoot it, but in 4th edition, if a creature is struck by a fighter, it gains the condition marked. And when a creature is marked, it gets a -2 penalty to attack rolls against any other creature except for the creature that marked it. In this case, the fighter with the bow. But That meant that the creature was going to take penalties to its attack because it was concerned or distracted or, and otherwise affected by the fighter. But the creature didn't even know that the fighter existed because the fighter was on the other side of an illusory wall that it couldn't see through. So not only it was affected by a mark from a creature it didn't know existed. Well, this basically broke our brains, and it was actually one of our first main, screw this game. We get that this game has solid rules. This is like what I was talking about today on the Patreon Discord, where I was talking about Magic the Gathering. You have rules, and there are things like equipment, and you just pay some mana, and you can attach equipment like a sword or a shield to a creature. Well, you can attach a sword in Magic the Gathering to a snake. You can attach 5 swords to a snake. You can attach 5 swords to a creature with only 2 hands in Magic the Gathering. The reality doesn't really matter. The game effects are all that matters. This spell is borderline into, this is just a game effect. That's kind of where we're at with this, right? And I promise you, someone casts this spell in your game, and something like this comes up, your whole session is going to grind to a halt as everyone tries to figure it out. All right, I am not going to talk too much more about this. I'm going to put it at C. It has incapacitation, but it's a reasonable debuff, and we'll go from there. Pyrotechnics, an old school goodie. Oh, it's from Extinction Curse. All right, I guess it does something different here. Well, it's 120 feet. It targets 1 fire. This is very much like Pyrotechnics of old. They have to make a fort save, and it's sustained for 1 minute. You turn a fire either into... You have to have a fire already. So that puts a big issue on this thing. If you don't have a fire going or a fire going somewhere, it doesn't do anything. Also, by the way, it can't be like your fire, because if you cast it on your torch, then the fire itself explodes into aerial fireworks. So that's not really going to help you if it's your fire. The fire is extinguished up to a size of a campfire, and it either explodes into fireworks, and it can dazzle or blind creatures, or you can turn it into a thick smoke cloud, giving creatures pretty large penalties to visual perception checks. And inside that smoke cloud, if they fail, they become sickened 1 from the smoke. Well, what do we think about this spell? The fact that you need a fire really hurts this spell. And it's a cool effect, but having to have a fire and the fact that it only works from the center point of the fire is a really big knock on this spell. And I'm going to give it a D for that reason. All right. We get Sculpt Sound. Our next one. GM Scott, unfortunately, you cannot ready spells in Pathfinder 2nd Edition, as you could only ready things which are 1 action or less. And since Pyrotechnics costs 2 actions, you cannot ready it. Sorry to say. All right. Well, this is an occult-only spell, so this is one of the exclusives that you get for being in part of the occult. It is a touch range, 2 actions, and 10-minute spell. You basically can change the sounds made by the creature or objects. You have to choose how you are altering them when you cast it, and you cannot alter it later. That's lame. It's a spell that only does one thing, okay? It only does one thing. You're not even going to let me change it later. You can cause something that didn't create a sound to make a sound. You can alter the sound. Anthony, I think when a spell is specific to a single tradition, it should be like a signature of that spell. And so I agree. Ryan, I did say, right. I said you couldn't ready Pyrotechnics, Ryan, because Pyrotechnics is 2 actions, right? I said you can ready a 1 action, but you couldn't ready Pyrotechnics because it is 2 actions, not because it's a spell. I'm sorry. I should have spoken more clearly. So, Well, here's the deal. You've gone out of your way. You've cast this 3rd level spell for what is probably a very minimally useful situation here. It lasts only 10 minutes. You have to pick how you're going to make the sounds when you cast it. And then when a creature hears it, they make a perception check against your spell DC they know that it was an illusion. So, interestingly, here we had been kind of crapping on silence for not actually keeping people from casting verbal components, but someone had brought up a obscure reference from some other part of the book, which says that you must be able to speak and enunciate clearly for verbal components. And here's some more fuel to their point, which is here you can say here, because the spell obscures sound instead of presenting it, using the spell to quiet a creature doesn't prevent that creature from using verbal components. Though it does prevent most auditory effects that rely on a creature hearing them. So there is something to there then. So yeah, and of course it's touch range. You can target somebody, and then if you succeed, I'm going to make them sound like a Tinkerbell fairy. And then if they manage to critically fail it, they become stupefied too. Well, this spell is obviously not really great. It does what it does. But I for starters, it's an illusion that makes something sound. Why is this level 3? Why does someone who makes a perception why do they get to make a perception check against your DC anyways? And that alone is kind of silly. It's like, let it just be an illusion. Why would I, if it was something like, I don't know, if I was imitating the voice of someone that person knew or something, but if like I made the sound of something, why would I have any reason to disbelieve that? Yeah, Brutus, I agree. I mean, it's mostly when people say fun roleplay uses, I laugh because that just basically means people messing around. Look, I've played these games before too, right? Like a person in our game campaign once got a frost greatsword, okay, made of a living shard of ice, which would continually break off and reform, like sublimate, whatever the opposite of sublimate is. It would just kind of crackle and form ice all the time. He got this awesome sword. You know what he did with it? He took it to a bar. He opened up his own bar, and he basically created a refrigeration system by sticking the sword into a keg, and it was like the world's first refrigerated cold beer. That's what he did with the sword. I mean, that, yeah, don't get me wrong, that's hilarious. That's funny about D&D. But like when you're rating a spell like this, it's like you can't do it like that. Fun effects like this just again, when I'm rating the spell, what am I rating it on? When if your session is going to consist of you hanging around the tavern, busting people's balls, trolling the barkeep, playing grab ass with the barmaids or the bar, servers, then yeah, take whatever spells you want. At that point, it doesn't even matter. I should have known that, Brutus. Deposition. But anyways, point is that, in those circumstances, it doesn't even matter what tier a spell is because you're not doing anything. You're just hanging out. So yes, like the spell could be fun, but like when you think about most, like whether it's an AP or a homebrew game, the situation isn't usually fun. It's dangerous. There are things on the line. There are people's lives at stake. There are worlds to save, cities to save. And, I think it's a D. All right. Secret Page. Pretty sure this is a GM spell. Well, it lasts forever. It casts 1 minute, and you can target a page up to 3 square feet in size. So I do like that. You change the text to look different. If it is a spell book or scroll, you can change it to show a spell that you know. And the replacement spell cannot be cast or used to prepare a spell. You can also transform the text into some other text that you have written. You can specify a password that allows a creature touching it to change the text back and forth. Very cool. Unlimited duration, level 3. Again, this falls into that category of cool wizard shit that I don't know, they probably should just be able to do, or in some other capacity have the ability to manage. But that's not the way the game works currently. But at least this spell lets you go, it's unlimited, I can do this and create hidden messages and not have to worry about it only lasting 24 hours, etc., etc. A PC could take this, but despite that, it is more of a GM. Because even if a PC is taking this, they're taking it more in a, sort of a GM kind of role. Anthony is 100% correct. If you're an expert in Arcana, maybe Secret Page is just a skill feat. It's called the Secret Page skill feat, and you need to be at least an expert in Arcana to take it. And when you take it, you gain access to the Secret Page action, which is part of your Arcana check. And you make an Arcana check, and if you roll, then you get to decide how much pages you convert, or it just works. I don't know, but point is, you could have done it that way. I'm going to put it into C under the GM. I think that's fair. Shadow projectile. We only have a couple left, actually. Only have 8 left. All right, shadow projectile. Bruce Cat is a little too niche for a skill feat in of itself. I agree with you. That's why, in my opinion, the skill feat should actually be more like maybe by school. So skill feat abjuration, skill feat illusion, skill feat evocation, skill feat whatever, enchantment. You get the point. And it gives you an idea. It's like recall knowledge, where it's not actually like hard written. It's more of suggestions, and it gives you the ability to perform illusion type effects at a DC set by the GM. So if I wanted to magically mask our faces or something like that, the GM could say, cool, that's a higher DC. Or if I wanted to make a cat sound like a dog, the GM might say, okay, that's a much lower DC. But now that I have this skill feat of illusion, I can use my occultism or my arcana skill to perform these illusions with a DC set by the GM. Okay. Anyways, moving on. Shadow projectile. I'm going to change up this music. Okay. Shadow projectile is a reaction. Seems good. Remember, one of the things there've been only a handful of spells that I have reversed my position on. One of them was Blood Vendetta from it's a bunch of traditions, but it's like a divine one. I think it might be an occult one as well. But I reversed my position about it because, casters have a hard time using reactions. And as you get higher level and you have a bunch of spell slots, it's nice to have things that you can do with your reaction. All right. So an ally within 20 feet of you makes a ranged attack roll. That's a reasonable amount of range. It's not a ton. You create an illusory duplicate of their attack to confuse. You launch your illusory double of your ally's projectile or spell, leaving the enemy unsure which attack to avoid. All right. The target takes 3d8 mental damage, depending on its will save. Regardless of the save, it then becomes immune to shadow projectile spells for 1 hour. Of course. Even if the creature passes the save, they are flat-footed against the triggering attack. Okay. That's pretty cool. And if they fail, they are flat-footed the attack and take the full damage. Okay. Right. As written, Eon Rider, it doesn't do that. But I should note that in my games, when I run games like at my table, I almost always allow effects like this to occur after the fact. because I want the wizard to be, or the bard or whoever's casting the spell. I want them to get a chance to feel like a hero, and I want them to sort of jump in and say, oh, I missed by 1 or I missed by 2, and they're like, oh, okay, well, I'll launch a shadow projectile alongside of it. Creature makes its will save. Oh, okay, it turned into a hit. I think that's way cooler. I think it's way more fun, and I think it is more fun. It is more powerful that way, absolutely. As written, this damage is pretty weak sauce, right? 3d8 mental damage isn't that great. It doesn't even take half on the success. It takes none. And all this is really doing is basically making a creature flat-footed against 1 attack once for a reaction at 3rd level. Yikes. Not impressed. But it is reaction. So normally I would give this spell a D, but learning what I have from Blood Vendetta, I'm going to upgrade it to a C. What do we think? Is that fair? Let me know in the chat if you think that's fair. Hey, I know I've been talking now for a little while, and we've only got a couple spells more to go. In fact, I'm pretty sure the next one is a doozy. Or maybe it's the next 2 ones. Shift Blame. We're going to do Shift Blame. All right. All right, looks like C is fine. C is good. Menandreas says C is fine. All right. Boothby says B. Boothby must respect the reactions more than we do. In my opinion, you could make it a B because upgrade the degree of success is powerful. What do you mean by that, Total Entropy? Oh, okay. No, but Total Entropy, that's not the way the spell actually works. The way the spell works is when they make their attack roll, you roll it, or you cast it. Like, you don't get to see the results, technically. So you wouldn't actually know. I mean, if you're doing it after the fact, yeah, I would definitely say it's a B. 3d8 is probably more than the triggering attack is doing. Yeah, but remember, Eon Rider, they take nothing on a miss, and like it is a spell, so they take nothing on a save, right? I don't know. I think C is good for it. All right. Shift Blame is another reaction. 30 feet. All right, the trigger, if you or another creature attacks a creature or fails at Deception, Diplomacy, or Intimidation. Okay, so we're doing this in combat, or we're doing this in a social encounter, which is pretty cool. Boothby, I will agree with that. C at lower levels. Once you get higher level and you've got some trash spells to throw away, I'm okay with the B. I think that's fine. I agree with Boothby's overall assertion. Again, that's why we talk about the spells and we don't just grade them. I think Boothby, did a good job there sizing it up and basically describing what we need to describe. All right. So good in combat or good in a social encounter. You alter the target's memories of the triggering event as they begin to form. You choose another creature, which can be you, with the capacity to make the triggering attack or skill check, and you alter the target's memories to recall the creature you chose as responsible for the triggering effect or skill check. They must make a will save, and then they are immune. If they critically succeed, they know that you tried to alter their memories. If they succeed, they don't realize you attempted to alter its memories, although it does know that you cast a spell. And if you fail, you successfully alter the target's memory. It isn't forced. It isn't forced to react to the new memories in a particular way, and it's likely to question them if it contradicts other information it knows or are implausible for the situation. It is gaslighting the spell. You just attacked me. No, I didn't. It was him. That is a weird spell. Yeah, I did. Nope, it is not uncommon, Anthony. It is mental, obviously, but I mean, you're only going to be using this against people that can think. I don't know what to think about this spell. Now, again, the failure clearly, it doesn't really do anything on the failure. And again, it says it doesn't force any sort of particular reaction out of them. And if it's completely unplausible, they're probably going to be like, what? Keep in mind, by the way, you or another creature attacks, which means like they could hit. Like you could like crush someone with a great sword and then cast Shift Blame and say that it was like, you know, the town guard standing next to, standing down the way. Again, they might question it, but apparently they do believe it because it's the murder hobo scapegoat spell. That's fine. Total entropy. And there's a lot of GM potential for that one, Runesmith, right? Like, what is the GM going to think? How are they going to react? What are they going to say? I don't know what to think about this spell. Poor guard. Yeah. He's just sitting there minding his day. A bunch of PC murder hobos come in. They try to one-shot the guy so they can steal everything from him. Don't kill him, so they shift blame onto the guard. By the way, you want to talk about role-playing, right? So the party is going down the street, and suddenly a rogue jumps out of the stands and shanks one of them and tries to kill them, the wizard, okay? Or it tries to pick their pocket or something with a deception check. They fail, and you, the GM, cast Shift Blame, and you say, oh, that wasn't you, that wasn't that rogue, that was the party's rogue. And you fail the check. Guess what? Your memory has been successfully altered. You, the player character, now believe that situation. You don't have to react in a certain way. It's not going to force you to attack your rogue companion, but you believe that it was your rogue companion that just tried to shank you in the street and steal your purse. That is forcing you into that situation. That's right. This is forcing a player to have to accept a truth that they, the player, know is not true, but the PC does believe is true. So again, the game is very sacrosanct. We never make people believe anything they don't want to believe. You can't use diplomacy or stuff like that to affect PCs, but this forces the players to believe something differently than what their player character believes is different. Or rather, have the player play their PC differently than they themselves know. Oh, Anthony, correct. That's my point. I'm saying this is kind of a troll, because that is my way, I guess. Somehow I became the troll of the internet. I'm not a troll, I promise you. S tier for shenanigans. S tier GM, C tier for chaos for players. That is true. That is true. So, I mean, you know, you can't like literally try to assassinate a king in the middle of a street, but, you know, it's still a weird and wonky spell that really has some interesting potential for some strange things. And again, there is no duration here. This is a permanent memory alter. I have no idea what to rank this spell. None. Just none. Oh, Anthony, exactly. This is 100% a spell that many players, a lot of things that I appreciate and enjoy in role-playing game are when the game tells me something different. And the challenge is for me as a player to take on the responsibility of playing the role of my character. Some people call that role-playing. To play my character correctly. But some people want to treat their characters as literally as living extensions of themselves. Like it's me riding inside the mech pilot suit. Like I'm playing, like it's the movie Inside Out. But instead of like feelings and thoughts and emotions inside the main character, it's me with a big thing of controls, and I am just pushing buttons, and my character literally does everything that you do. That's how some people like to play the games. I think that's horrible. And that this type of spell would really upset those players. Yeah, I don't know if we can rate this spell. This spell may have to be unrateable. Is this like a new it's unrateable. I don't think we can rate this spell. The spell is verbal. It was him. Actually, no, Minandras. It says, if they succeed, they don't realize that you attempted to cast their memory. It does know you cast a spell. So this implies that if they fail, they don't actually know anything. I mean, obviously the tier of the spell depends on the GM how it rules it. I mean, that's true for anything that's this kind of wonky. I'm gonna put it at GMA, just because I have to put it somewhere, right? But I'm gonna give this thing a special. I'm gonna give this thing a special golden, special color there, because it is a wonky one. There can be no doubt about that, right? We can all agree to that. It's a little wonky. There we go. I mean, the effect is powerful, but B for bizarre, right? Like we've been put the heart arc. We got the heart icon. There we go. Oh, wait, it goes after. All right. You guys are very demanding here. All right, there we go. All right. Our next spell is, of course, slow. Slow. Before we talk about slow, I do want to take this moment to thank everyone who has tipped this stream, and I want to thank all of our patrons. They are the people who make this stream possible through their continued support. If you're interested in supporting the show, I advise you to check the link below. We've got a link there to our Patreon page, patreon.com/Knights of Last Call. Not only by becoming a member do you gain access to our Discord, but if you join at the Knight tier or higher, you gain access to a library of exclusive Patreon videos and posts, as well as access to our new Northern Reaches mega community game, played by over 50 people, a combination of players and GMs, where we are playing 5, 6, 7, 8 times a week. You can pretty much play Pathfinder 2 almost as much as you want. Subject to certain limitations, but this is not Pathfinder Society. No, this is a living, breathing, persistent world that we are all sharing in. This isn't just running the same adventure over and over again. No, this world adapts, adjusts, reacts. It's created by the players and by the GMs as we move forward through an evolving creative endeavor. We are essentially creating the world and the story as we go. So it's a really, really interesting experiment that we are taking advantage of the fact that the Knights of Last Call, have paid for a completely kitted out Forge server and Foundry server. We have 7 licenses on the one server. That way we can run multiple games at the same time. We have an exclusive zone just for our GMs to be able to build their Foundry items so that we can transport them in. And yeah, it's a really whole complete thing. We just launched it. Just 2 weeks ago at the beginning of the month. And we've already had, I think, almost a dozen games. So really, really fun, really, really successful. We already have some interesting things happening there. And all of that and more is part of our Patreon. And of course, you get access to our Discord. And our Discord is legendary. We have more patron members than NoNat. And the vast majority of the people there are extremely, extremely experienced GMs who are, always giving advice, always giving their opinions. And it is we have a lot of different opinions there. It is not a combative place. It is not a place where people are attacked, but it is a place where I encourage people to voice their opinions. And we oftentimes don't always agree. People don't always agree with me. If you're thinking right now, I don't agree with everything that this guy is saying, but I like some of his points, then that might be the type of place that you'll enjoy visiting. We really try to force down groupthink, and we really try to encourage active conversations. Yes, it is the place where Derek is always wrong. That is correct. All right. So I just wanted to plug some things here and get some things out there, but let's move on to slow. All right. Well, I'm going to read it, but we already know what it is. It is a fortitude save 30 feet, 1 minute. And if the creature passes the fort save, they are slowed 1 for 1 round. So basically they lose 1 action. We talked about this before with Paralyze, where you, against a creature that's higher level than you giving up 2 actions and a slot to trade for 1 creature's action that's much higher level than you. Okay? That is a fantastic deal. So why is this different than Paralyze? It's not incapacitation. It's not incapacitation. I cannot stress this enough. It is not incapacitation. So that is huge, number one. Number two, if they are failed, they are slowed for 1 minute. That's it. End of story. There's no saves. There's no ongoing things. Slowed 1 is almost a death almost a death sentence. It really is. Slowed 1 is so bad in most contexts in this game. It is incredibly pain. Slow is this game's save or die. K-Swiss deck has it correct. And if you critically fail, I give you permission as a GM to just remove the creature from the map. Just push delete on your Foundry VTT. I've done it several times. I know Aaron, whose game I'm running in it, has done it several times. If the creature saves, if the creature critically fails, just remove it. You're saving everybody time. Okay? Minor spoiler alert, but there is a boss at the end of the first adventure of Abomination Vaults. It's a spellcaster, and it critically failed its slow in the first round of combat. Critically failed its slow DC check, and it was slowed too. Guess what? When you're a caster and you're slowed too, you can't cast spells anymore. Okay? It's done. And you want to hear what makes this spell even more ridiculous? Okay? Remember haste, which we only gave, by the way, what did we give haste? A B, right? Haste can heighten to multiple targets, and it adds 4 levels. So that means it has to be 7th level to be multiple target haste. Guess what? Heighten 6, you're only adding 3 levels to this already broken spell to make it 10 multi-target. Guess what, people? Slow is not S tier. That's right. It's S+. This spell is so good. It is in a, you know what? We've now determined what S stands for. It's the slow tier. Is it even close to the power of slow? Slow is so powerful. Its effects are almost game breaking. If there is a spell in the game that arguably I would say ruins the game, it is this spell. Again, I come from an older school of thought where I don't mind, I'd almost rather the creature just die. It's like, that's almost more noble to me, because being slowed 1 or slowed 2 is just, then it's just embarrassing. This thing can barely move around. It is how this spell not only made it through playtesting, but made it through editing. But then it has been in existence for almost 3 years and has not received an update or a nerf from Paizo is beyond me. I don't understand it. The spell is on another level. It's just so good. And would S still be S if it was in cap? No, a big reason why slow is S tier is because it's in cap. It probably does need incapacitation. But at that point, by the way, if it was incapacitated, it's still better than Paralyze. Because it lasts for a minute and they don't get any future saves. It's just incredible. The spell is stupidly powerful. And because it doesn't have incapacitation, right? It means you never have to heighten it. I mean, you can heighten it to 6 to get the 10 multi-target, but you could be level, 13, 14, 15, 16, and just using your level 3 slow on the single target boss. Yeah, there's a bunch of ways you could fix it. Ongoing saves to break the effect, repeated saves at the end of its turn. Somehow you could make an escape check to break out of it so it eats up your actions, or it could have incapacitation. Zolgathor, K-Swiss deck, Menandreas, all of these things are awesome things that they could do. And guess what? They didn't do it. So I don't know what to tell you. This is, we've talked on this thing before. Self-confessed cynic. I don't think he's in the chat right now, but Vin from our Patreon is self-confessed cynic, by the way, has often talked about the weakness of the divine list. I have talked about the weakness of the divine list. This is another main reason why the divine list is weak. Okay, not only do they gave up slow for remove disease and neutralize poison. Okay. Also, by the way, look at the effect of this. You dilate the flow of time around the target, slowing its actions. Why is this primal? Why is slowing time a primal effect? Right? Look at our occult list, which you can imagine is also the occult arcane, right? We've got, cup of dust where we make something, age. We've got what's another one? We've got the day's weight where we increase the speed of time. Yeah, slow makes sense for occult. Slow makes sense for arcane. Why is this primal? Maybe there is a time domain for clerics, Brutus. There could be. And maybe they get it. Let me take a look here. Time domain PF2 AON, because you can't use Archives and Nephis. There is a time domain. And we don't know what they get. I know what they're... Oh, here we go. It depends. If you get Alceta, you get Dimension Door. That's not what we want. What about Pharasma? Pharasma gets ghostly weapons. Yogg Sarath. Nope, he doesn't get it. He gets black tentacles. Sheikah gets haste. Two crap. Pondo Logger says 2 crappy gods. Have I literally missed all of them? Well, it's not Pillars of Knowledge. It's not Ra. All right, I don't know which gods. Only 2 gods. All right. So, Silverwolf, you bring up an interesting question. So there were some people who asked, they said, wait a second. What about the 2 deities? It's probably those 2 deities. Yep, Slow and Matravash. There you go. Okay. So I don't even know who those deities are. But so Silverwolf, a lot of people said, hey, why didn't Tim use Slow more often in the game? And with Derek hero points, that would have been busted in OP. Tim knew that, and he knew that if he started using Slow and he started using my hero points, that I would probably have to step in and nerf something, either nerf Slow or nerf my hero points. And so Tim basically, it was like a mutually assured destruction situation. Exactly, K-Swiss deck. It was a gentleman's agreement that we understood what was at stake here, and we both agreed to it was an unspoken agreement, really, that he wouldn't use my hero points on slows because, that would have just been game breaking, powerful. So we avoided it. All right. Well, that was Slow. We only got 4 spells left. Let's knock them out, shall we? We've got Sudden Recollection. We got an uncommon enchantment mental, 2 actions, 30 feet, unlimited duration. We place a bit of knowledge deep inside of a creature's subconscious or make a willing creature forget some information until a trigger occurs. This is somebody really liked the movie Inception, and they thought, what if I turn that into a spell? Okay. Basically, you can plant something into someone's mind, or you can make them forget something. And and if you choose a piece of information they didn't know and create a trigger, such as seeing an object, hearing a phrase, or witnessing an event, and as soon as they experience the trigger, it receives the information and the spell ends. And if they were willing, they can choose a piece of information they already knew and suppress memory of their information until blah, 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 blah. Ian Ryder, this is going to be a GMD. I agree. It's a weird spell. All right. 3, Fold Aspect. You get to swift. Oh, God. It's a polymorph spell. This spell allows you to shift between 3 different versions of yourself. As a maiden, a mother, or a matriarch. Does this mean is this spell only female cast? Doesn't look like it. Okay. Well, regardless, you could become a young adult, or elderly. Choose one when you cast the spell, and while the spell lasts, you can change the age to any of the 3 or to your natural age with a single action, which is the concentrate. Your form always looks like you, regardless of your age. but it's polymorph. But it doesn't actually make you look any different. But at least it lasts until your next preparation. Wait a second. What? Wait. What? Wait, what? It says your form always looks like you, regardless of the age. Okay, so you're not unrecognizable. Okay, I was reading it wrong. It alters your physical appearance and personality to present an authentic version of yourself at different ages. This grants you a +4 status bonus to deception checks to pass as the chosen age. Remember how there are those weird spells like knock that basically let you pick lock as a wizard, but you get to add your level if you're not proficient, and you get to +4 bonus, right? And disguise self. Well, this is like those, but really, really, really bad. F. We got a super chat coming in from Vin himself, self-confessed cynic. Slow in S+ tier. The world is right and just. That's right. And honestly, I don't know if there's ever going to be anything else that is an S+ tier. I cannot think of any spell that I am aware of. Maybe Maze. Maybe Power Word Kill. Maybe, I don't know. That is an S+ tier. I can't really think of this. You know, Zolgathor, it doesn't actually let you be a child, though. You have to be a young adult, an adult, or a elderly. Yeah, okay. Oh, I like that. I like that better. GMF tier. I like that. I like that better. Oh, okay. All right. Vin agrees with me. Maze, maybe. Okay. Yep. Not because of the... Nah, okay. Not the power words, because of the level scaling. Okay, I agree. We'll get there. All right. Well, guess what? We've got 2 spells left. We've got Time Jump. It's 1 action. Cool. Verbal. Cool. You jump forward a few seconds in time. You get 2 actions for 1 action, each of which must be used to either leap, stand, step, or stride. When you take these actions, yada, 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 you can't do anything with the actions. This is all the rules. This is like, you know what this is? All the stuff here in Pathfinder 2, it's like the disclaimers on like medical bill, you know, like medical commercials where they talk about some new drug, and they're like, Zen Ultra will give you back your life. Yeah, let you spend time with your family. And then it's like, Zen Ultra is not responsible for any heart attacks, liver conditions, bowel movements, loose stools, reddening of the face that may occur due to Zen Ultra, right? There's all this stuff. Everything here just seems to be crazy here. But leaping through time is distracting, and so if you use it again within 1 minute, you become stupefied 4. You know, you're net gaining 1 action, and while that is happening, time is frozen. This spell is pretty cool, you know. Thematically, it's pretty cool, and more importantly, you know, it lets you kind of go and get some cool stuff done. Zolgathor, take care of your people. I don't know. Where do you guys think this goes? So, Time Jump. Oh, self-confessed cynic, Damian Williams. I like that you started with Divine this time, so at least it looked good for 1 video before you learn about Slow. Because Slow is going to be at that S+ tier, Damian, for every single other tier here. That is 100% correct. Divine had its 1 chance to shine. Time Jump, according to Mr. Vin himself, it's A or S fight me. I did not think it is S tier. Now, I will say this. Okay, Waka is correct. What situation? Divin likes to play high-level games. And, you know, look, having played the game, I would admit that not only time being frozen, you know, like if you just gain the ability to like stand and stride, right, that would be okay. But the fact that time is frozen means that like if you are surrounded, prone by a bunch of creatures, all of which have attacks of opportunity, well, I can stand and stride and then still have 2 more actions left to cast a spell. That is a really, really, really big deal. I like this. It's the Misty Step of the system. It's very cool too, right? Like we gotta give it points for the tier. So let me do this. All right, I'm going to do 2 polls. Okay, I'm going to say, is it S tier or A tier, or is it a B? Okay, so this is the first one. Is it S tier or is it A tier, or is it a B? Vote. Okay, let the votes begin. We've got some people saying it could be B, and it's A at higher levels where you can spare the slots. I agree. I do think overall it is a better spell when you can spare the slots. Taking this spell, you would never take this as a 5th level character. You know, you only have 2 or 3 level 3 spells. I very much doubt one of them is going to be, time jump. That's so weird, Damien. I don't know why it does that. Are you sure it's erasing your vote? I can't actually see who voted. Yeah, it could be lagging, guys. All right. Well, I've seen enough here, so I'm going to end the poll. All right. Anthony says he would take it at level 5, being an amazing panic button. All right, so everyone clearly agrees that not clearly, but 75% is a pretty good margin. So I'm going to ask again. Time jump. 21 Jump Street. Is time jump S or A? Let's ask the community. All right, make your vote. I agree. I think the spell is really solid, really cool. I don't want to alter anybody with my opinion, but my general thought on it is that it is A tier. But we'll see where we get. I agree the spell is very powerful, very flavorful, arcane, and occult. You voted A because at lower levels there's better options. Okay. Right. It's only verbal total entropy. It's a great point. No material, no somatic means no attack of opportunity. All right, we're getting in our votes. So hopefully everybody's doing good. I'm looking forward to this weekend. Good Friday off tomorrow. I think our Pathfinder 2 game might be canceled. I think Bob is going to the Cleveland Guardians first, a home opener. So that's pretty exciting. And our other player who plays with us remotely, Kaz, he lives out in Seattle, well, Northwest Washington State. I think he's busy as well. And generally speaking, if we have 2 people cancel from our group of 5 players, we usually cancel the session. So I'm not sure what we're doing, but at the same time, Aaron is getting ready to move, which is really exciting. We've been playing in his basement for, goodness gracious, probably going on 15 years. Has been sort of our primary hub. Basically, Aaron's entire basement is basically our gaming room for our Friday night games. It's pretty awesome. All right, here we go. End in the poll. All right. Time jump is solidly an A. All right. This is first one of, welcome Throwaway. So Throwaway, we originally started, I think, with just the scroll case. And then we added the wand, and then I think it was, I think it was Total Entropy, actually, who tipped a good chunk of change for me to make the GM slot. And that one actually has been really, really popular, and actually a really good place to put certain ideas for spells. So I think it was Total Entropy. Hopefully I'm not stealing someone's credit. I think it was Total Entropy's idea for the GM slot. So, yeah, the AoE Fear, I mean, let's remind ourselves, Fear is not actually a level 3 spell. It is only here because it really needs to stand out as being really powerful. The heightened level 3 Fear is a very, very powerful spell. All right, folks, we got one last spell. Let me bring it up here. We have the Wall of Shadow. I haven't liked most of the walls so far, but we got one. Here we go. It's from Strength of Thousands, so minor spoiler alert. Darkness, Evocation. It's a 3-action spell, as most walls are, but it has a 30-foot range, which is pretty short. You form a wall of pure darkness, 60 feet long and 10 feet high. It has to be unbroken, so that its edges do not pass through any creatures or objects, as most spells are. It has to be vertically, and it can be shorter in height or length as you wish. But it does sound as if you cannot, it's a straight line. So you can't bend it or warp it, which is actually kind of shitty. The wall prevents light from passing through and is a sheet of pure darkness. Creatures with dark vision, without dark vision. So if you have dark vision, you can see through it. And it's too thin to hide in it. So at level 3, you create a spell that is basically controlled darkness. And you have to heighten it all the way to 5. And then dark vision can still see through the wall. They can still see through the wall at heighten 5. But they just gain concealed. Only if you take this all the way to 7 do creatures with dark vision finally get completely blocked, and creatures with greater dark vision can still see through it, but barely enough that they get concealed. Boy, that is really rough. This spell is not one that I would ever take. I'm going to put it in D. All right. Well, that, as they say, is that. The heightens do feel so unnecessary. GMD, you say, huh? Why GM? I'm curious. Why GM? That's interesting. Yeah, so let's talk about Occult. I'm kind of impressed, actually. I initially came into the game thinking that Occult was kind of a shitty list. It has Magic Missile. That is a huge win. It has Fear. That's a huge win. It has all of the really great... actually, Floyd, it was not a rant. It was just a pure, unadulterated... The spell is incredible. It's amazing. It deserves its own tier. And to be quite honest with you, Floyd, I had the S Plus ready to go before we even started last week's stream. Because remember, I thought we were going to get through this in one stream, but we had the Book of the Dead previews. And so I had that all set up. You know, the thing about one of the reasons I think I like this is there's not too much Eldritch Horror this level. You know, we've got Agonizing Despair, but that's not really that, you know, evil and Cthulhu-ish. There's a couple kind of ooby, eeby, weeby, GB ones here. But for the most part, these are just some really solid illusion, time, magic, arcana stuff. Now, a lot of the things that we are loving about this spell list right now are also going to be on the arcane list. We know this. But there are some things here that won't be on the arcane list that I really do like. I think Circle of Protection is a very powerful spell, and I do like it. I think Hypercognition is a really cool spell, and I do like it. So there's a couple of things that the Occult caster is going to get over the Arcane caster. And like I said, the Occult gets Soothe, and they get Magic Missile at level 1. And then they're getting Haste and Slow and Heroism and Circle of Protection at level 3. And again, your Arcane caster is not going to have access to Heroism, and that's one of the kind of the bedrock buffs of the system. So it's pretty good. I'm pretty good. I'm pretty happy about this list. Not that many Fs, honestly. Not that many Fs. And some solid scroll options. I love some of the divinations, and it's just packed full of A's and B's. So, and obviously we know that there's never going to be, that many S's, which is probably ultimately a good thing. But also ultimately, I'm really impressed. I'm really impressed with the list. Well, we normally go to 10 o'clock, but it's 9. So if you guys want, I'll stay on for a bit. We can chat. You guys can ask me any questions. I know a lot of you are patrons, which is great. I'm happy to see you here. If you're not a patron, that's okay. You're cool too. You can hang out with us. So I'm willing to talk about anything. We could talk about other systems. We could talk about some of the D&D news. We can talk about our upcoming campaign that we are hoping to launch. And of course, if you do have any questions, put them in the chat. Type in all caps with a colon, question, just like this. And that's just going to make it a lot easier for me to see your question. Okay? Capital question, colon. Didn't catch the D&D news. Would you mind sharing? Sure. Let's do it. All right. Whoop. 1 second. 1 second. Watch together. All right, here we go. Boop. All right. Okay. All right, here we go. We ready? All right, we're ready. I'm gonna mute the thing here. This came out today, and here we go. And that's it. That's the trailer. So what do we got going on in this trailer? Well, we've got we kind of come in here on what looks to be your traditional pen and paper and dice bag, right? And then what do we see happen here? Okay. Well, we see a tablet come into view, right? And we can see that. We can see that real clearly here. Here's the tablet. It's got a red dragon on it. A couple of things. One, is this a PDF? Or two, is this part of some sort of integration, right? We're not entirely sure because it looks kind of like a PDF, right? And so again, it's kind of the trailer. I'm thinking about this from the point of view of like a production designer, right? These shots were very carefully chosen. So what is this opening shot telling me? This opening shot is telling me, look at how our games have changed. Look at how we are using paper and pencil with our digital tools. Now, granted, why does this player have the red dragon stats out? I don't know. Number two, this is something I was not aware of, but people who are much more aware of 5th edition than me have pointed out that the information on the character sheet is a little different than any information that we currently see from any other characters or any other current classes or things of that nature. It looks to be some sort of pre-written character sheet. But again, to me, this is setting the tone. The tone is we've already changed. We are already integrating digital tools with our non-digital play spaces. Okay? That's the first set. It's kind of almost telling me that. Okay? As if to reinforce that, here is a picture of minis, right? On what looks to be a paper mat, or is it an embedded television? There's some debate about whether this mat is an actual physical mat. I think it is a physical map because there's crease lines. Okay, so it's crease lines. But again, showing, hey, look, we're playing D&D around the table, just like we always have, right? With our minis and our miniatures, and there's some popcorn, right? So it's just like the D&D that you know and you love. Okay, but again, it's setting the stage, saying, here's how it is. This is how it's always been. D&D, I think, is really, really trying hard to avoid the mistake they made with 4th edition, which was basically saying, screw all that old shit, right? Throw it away. If you played 3rd edition or 2nd edition or 1st edition D&D, you're an idiot, right? This is the wave of the future. It's going to be awesome. Their messaging, their branding now is very, very, very careful to make sure that they are very respectful of the past and that they are very careful about the way that you may be choosing to play the game. Okay. So we've got this we've got this crazy thing here, and then we've got our sheets, and then we zoom in on a dice tower. And the dice are coming out, and it looks like it's a nicely crafted wooden dice tower. Okay, that's pretty cool. Again, look, to me, this is saying, look, you guys have figured out ways to spend more money on this hobby without us. You're buying custom mugs and custom crystal dice and beautifully carved and dovetailed magnetic dice towers. Like, this isn't just a game for you. This is an investment. This is a lifestyle, you know, and we respect that. We want to be a part of that. Oh, this is just reminding you, this is a fun, clever way to foreshadow the date where the announcement will be made. To be clear, this is a trailer for the trailer, right? But you can see here that in the dice, we've spelled out 4/21, which is when the official announcement is going to happen here in a week. So we've got that. Another zoom in on a character sheet. Doesn't look like there's anything too different here. AC 18, pretty good on a Paladin. In 5th edition, AC is 18 is really good. But then we have a zoom in on an untitled D&D movie by some people I don't know who they are. But again, stressing this idea of like, look, D&D is becoming, it's everywhere, man. It's going to be a movie soon. And we've got companies building dice trays. Like, this game has become more than that. And this, again, it's all about, it's like an advertising slogan. I don't remember what it is, but it's like, just keep telling them the same thing over and over and over again. Okay, here we go again. Look, it's your miniature of a beholder, a classic monster from D&D myth, from the D&D mythos. And it's a miniature used for your combat games. And this is what gamers have been using for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years in their tabletop games. But look, the game has changed. It's not just about beholder miniatures. It's also about Cthulhu Funko Pops, or Mind Flayer Funko Pops. Isn't that cute? Look how different people are enjoying the game now. It's not just about sitting around rolling dice and going into a dungeon and playing with your friends. No, it's also about collecting things and being part of the D&D zeitgeist. And look at this cute Funko Pop. It's just like the Beholder. It's just another way for you to enjoy D&D, right? Cut to this. This, to me, is telling us video games are cool. You don't think D&D is coming to your video game? It is coming to your video game, and we're going to make sure it's a part of your video game. The little plushy hamster, some people have said it might be related to Boo, the spacefaring hamster. Maybe it's a nod to the upcoming Baldur's Gate Magic the Gathering set, of which Minsk and Boo favor very, highly. They were a character in the AFR set. Is it just supposed to be cute and chibi? I'm not sure. But again, I think they're trying to say here, like, look, this is an image from a Dungeons and Dragons trailer. It is a picture of a stuffed hamster and an Xbox controller. The messaging here is telling you D&D is moving beyond what we know it to be as just a game. Okay. Then we got a mini as it kind of pans, and this thing has been sort of looming in the background the entire time as we sort of pan to these shots of what looked to be some sort of almost plastic DM screen. And here it is, D&D Direct. Now, is this just a fancy mock-up prop for D&D Direct? Who knows? Is it some sort of idea that maybe now there will be something equivalent to a virtual DM screen or a touchpad DM screen, almost like an iPad assembled together? Or, players have been using it. Why not make a product? If that's the way people are going to play the game, why not make that the way that people play the game? All right. And then, you got to kind of have the entire establishing shot, your dice, your hamster, your Xbox controller, your miniatures, your iPad, your pen and your paper, and of course your Mind Flayer Funko Pop. And yeah. And so that is sort of the end of the commercial. It kind of zooms in here. and we are getting an announcement 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 noon Eastern, and I think it's going to be on I think it's Twitch. I think they're doing it. So, and you know, exactly. And so Ian Ryder says, you know, so D&D Direct, the name of the announcement show is like Nintendo Direct, right? It's kind of, no, it's some sort of, I think, some sort of new product line. And, you know, I think what they are trying to do here, quite frankly, is, you know, I think what they're trying to do is create, they're going to roll out a massive campaign that is going to basically be that D&D is going to be multiple brand channels going into multiple areas. And I wouldn't be surprised if they announce some sort of new digital D&D directive, whether that is a D&D official, right? D&D bought D&D Beyond, whether that's some sort of D&D digital integration platform, aka a comprehensive virtual tabletop, where they are going to combine VTT with D&D Beyond with their products and just make it into one big thing that you subscribe to. And now everyone will have to pay every month in order to play D&D. And you have created a generation of players who do not know how to use the books. They may have never owned them. They have learned to be accustomed to playing on a virtual table. And if D&D as a business can shift that market to basically say, you need to have a subscription for us, or you don't get to play D&D, essentially. Oh, sure, you could go buy the book and go play it in real life, but how many people are going to do that? When they go, well, I only play online, or they go, I've never used the books, I've always used D&D Beyond. If that is all packaged, as Total Entropy says, as D&D as a service, right? Just like software as a service. That's brilliant for them. That's going to make them so much money they won't know what to do with. So, yeah. I mean, I don't think that's going to be what that is. It could be, but I sincerely doubt that. I think this is going to be some sort of comprehensive move into a digital virtual space. They did it with Magic the Gathering already, and I think they're going to do it with D&D too. And quite frankly, I don't know what the numbers are exactly. I think that most people that are playing D&D right now are playing it online. If they weren't before COVID, they are now after COVID. And I bet you there's a lot of people who said, I kind of prefer this. I can be home. I can play in a game with a bunch of different people. It's easier for me to find players and new groups. And that might be, honestly, the way that everyone is enjoying the game. And D&D might be saying, we want all that Roll20 money for us. We want to keep everything centered. And so if D&D can create sort of a monolithic, we have the rules, we have the character sheet and the DM integration, we have the adventure integration, and we have the virtual tabletop integration, why wouldn't you do that? And that may be very much so the future of Dungeons & Dragons. We'll find out in a week. That will be my last live stream before I leave for my Mother's Day cruise with my mother. I am sure that day I will be reacting. Let's take a look. Yeah, it's Thursday, so expect a reaction. I might even, who knows, maybe I'll go live right after the announcement. Because here's the thing. We just talked for 2 hours about Pathfinder 2, but make no mistake, right? I am a Dungeons & Dragons player. I like Pathfinder 1. I like Pathfinder 2. Those are both games. But the games that I've played for longer than anything is D&D. If you ask me what is my favorite, fantasy role-playing, it's Dungeons & Dragons 3rd edition, right? That is where my truest of truest hearts is. It's where I've had the fondest memories of playing this game. And before that, I learned to play on 2nd edition and cut my teeth on 1st edition and basic. I loved 4th edition and was so excited about what they did with the game. And yeah, 5th edition's not my favorite. So, but make no mistake, D&D, Dungeons & Dragons, is very important to me, and it continues to be important to me. So I'm genuinely interested and genuinely concerned. And am I excited at all? Probably not. And so yeah, we'll see where we're going to go with. And again, I've seen these type of announcements before. I try to stay, my ear to the ground, my ear to the pavement, and read what other people are posting and theorizing, people who may be smarter than me. And I would have loved to talk to Steven from Roll for Combat and see what he thought about this announcement. It's like they can't even let him have 1 week. Paizo announces that awesome. Again, they make the decision to publish Abomination Vault of 5th edition. I don't agree with that decision. It's great for Paizo. I don't think it's great for Pathfinder. People, whatever, disagree with me. But then Paizo announces that they're partnering with Foundry. It's a mutualistic part, and I'm really excited about that decision. And it's like, wow, okay, cool. Paizo is really gonna. And then not even a week goes by, and and Wizards of the Coast has to just completely one-up them and trump them and basically say, oh, you're partnering? Well, guess what? We're building our own entire ecosystem, And in a way, it'll be like this iPhone, okay? iPhone 8, by the way. I can switch, and I'll tell you why I can switch. I don't have all my stuff on iCloud. I don't have iTunes. I don't have an Apple TV. I don't have an Apple Watch. I don't have a MacBook. I don't have a MacBook Air. I have a cell phone that is an Apple. I can change. This is the only thing in my house that uses a Lightning port. That is not the case for a lot of people. Everything you have is in iCloud. Everything, all your passwords are part of your keychain. Everything you do is tied to that ecosystem. And so even if you kind of wanted to change the phone, you say to yourself, well, it's not that bad of a phone, and I'm going to stick with my Apple, and I'm going to stick with the next version of the iPhone because it's less work than having to change all of that ecosystem integration. That is going to be what D&D is going to try to do. They are going to try to make every facet of their ecosystem be tied to D&D. Your table is D&D. Your virtual integration is D&D. Who knows? Maybe there's even going to be some sort of D&D Zoom. Point is, if you suddenly want to think about changing games, you have to not just give up the game, you have to give up everything else that you have learned. You're going to have to give up all of the softwares and services and everything else that you've learned. And it's going to lock you into that ecosystem, the D&D ecosystem. And why not? We're not just a game like some of those other game systems. We've got movies and plushies and Wormwood tables and Xbox games. Does Pathfinder have any of that? No. Right? Do you want to go see the D&D movie with your friends and then go hop onto your D&D game? Of course you do. D&D's awesome. While you're there, why don't you go pick up a Mind Flayer Funko Pop? Okay? That is what they are trying to build. They are trying to build into this locked-in ecosystem. And yeah, that's what you're going to end up with. Quite frankly, if that isn't the announcement, I'm almost disappointed because I'm like, damn, Wizards of the Coast, I thought you guys were smarter than that, right? Like, that just seems to me to be like a no-brainer. So, what's the deal? Why wouldn't you just do that? I don't know. Is it, and if that's the way most people are playing, and that's the way that people want to play it, you're also helping out the customer, right? You're giving the customer what they want. Is it a monopoly? Yeah. Is it going to lock people into a game? Yeah. And that's exactly what they want. It's exactly what they want. Yeah. So, not only that, you go to the store. I'm just thinking about this now as we talk about this. You go to the store and you get your Mind Flayer Funko Pop, and you get your Displacer Beast and Beholder Funko Pop, and you go, that's really fun. And then they tell you that those creatures don't even exist in a game other than D&D. And if you want to play against those creatures and fight against those monsters or get to play as them, you have to play D&D. And again, it's all about building this idea in people's mind that what you perceive of as the Dungeons and Dragons brand only exists within the narrow walls of Dungeons and Dragons, within Wizards of the Coast, right? Derek, how fast would you sign up if it supported fully errated 4E? Instantaneously! Instantaneously. I'd be like, I would just like take the Pathfinder 2 directory full of PDFs and just delete it. And just, no, I'm just kidding. I would. Yeah, 4E, it'd be sweet. I'd excite it. Build by VTT, have matchmaking LFG, allow people to pay for the sub or pay more to set up a pro GM account, right? You want to be a professional game master, right? And you want to run games professionally. Well, you better have yourself set up as a pro GM, because you're not going to look legit unless you are rocking, right? You know, with a pro GM account on your D&D, you know, direct or whatever it says. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if anybody else disagrees with me. I don't know if anybody else thinks I'm way off the mark here. You know, please let me know in chat. I've been trying to sort of kind of question around here. Scroll up to see my question. I don't want to ask my question again. Okay. Thanks, Anthony. Geesh, how long ago did you ask your question? Sorry, I was talking. Oh, by the way, thank you. Anthony, you asked a question about Microscope. I was wondering if there's a good, democratic, collaborative way to plan a Western Marches multiple DMs campaign with that system. Of course. Yeah. You just play with multiple GMs. That would actually be really, really sweet. That would be an awesome way to do it. 100%. Very cool way to do it. Yeah. I would just do it the same way that we would do it with your players. I think that's incredible. Yeah, okay. I know some people are worried about the NFT stuff. I'm not as worried about that, honestly. I don't think they're going to go that route. I think they know that there's enough negative press associated with NFTs and blockchain technology. I think they're going to avoid that at all costs. And I don't think they need to tap into that. They already have everything. What they want to do now is they want to lock in their audience that is already accustomed to using all these tools, and they want to take D&D Beyond and their D&D game and their D&D publisher and their virtual tabletop, and they just want to cement it all into one vertical, and it's just one source for everything. And you pay one low monthly fee, and you get access to everything. Play unlimited games, create unlimited characters, get access to all the rules and all the up-to-date errata the moment it happens. Yada, yada. You know, so it's going to be very appealing for a lot of people. And, yeah. And of course, there's a critical mass component. As more people play this way, they are now paying a monthly fee to play that way. That's going to be the way they want to play, because that's going to be the way that they get value for their monthly subscription. Well, the more D&D players that are playing on this sort of virtual environment, that means that there are less D&D players to play with in person, thus making it more likely that if you want to play D&D, you have to play D&D on this platform. And the cycle repeats itself ad infinitum until there's so few D&D players left in the wild that the vast majority of them, not all of them, it'll never be 100% adoption rate. Of course not. I have no idea what the current adoption rate is. I've seen speculation. I've seen things that people say from various reports. I don't know that I put a lot of stock in it, but I think I've seen ranges from anywhere from 50 to 70%. Now, granted, that is highly biased because of COVID. But how many people started playing D&D just in the last 2.5 years? A lot? Maybe. I think there are people on our Discord who say they have never played an RPG game in person. That's crazy. But that might be the truth for a lot of people. You know, and I think very highly of anyone who joins our Patreon. You know, they're not just some mindless sheep. No, they are inquisitive, and they want to grow, and they have opinions and thoughts they want to share. So these are people I respect a lot. And if there are people on that environment who've only played virtual games, well, my God, can you imagine what it's like for the other, 4.5, whatever it is, million players? I think that's crazy, you know? Question, have you talked live about the Wizards D&D Beyond acquisition specifically? No, I think that just happened, but I didn't talk about it Tuesday, and it just happened. I did not talk about that acquisition specifically. Other than that, it's a no-brainer. It's my understanding they bought them lock, stock, and barrel. I think they bought the development team and the whole shebang. they just brought them on, and I don't know. I think they did a press. I think they did a presser for that. Let me see if they have an official news article here. Let's see. I got the press release here. Bringing it up. All right, here we go. Hasbro announced that it is acquiring D&D Beyond, the leading digital tool set and game companion for the company's groundbreaking fantasy franchise, Dungeons and Dragons. From Fandom, the world's largest fan platform, has owned and operated D&D Beyond since 2019 and has grown the direct-to-consumer business to a leading role player with close to 10 million registered users. This strategic acquisition for $146 million in cash will further strengthen Hasbro's capabilities in the fast-growing digital tabletop category while also adding veteran talents to the Wizards of the Coast team and accelerating efforts to deliver exceptional experiences for fans across all platforms. God, the media release on this is so sick. Since 2017, D&D Beyond has helped to power Dungeons & Dragons tabletop play and deliver the brand's 8th consecutive year of go in 2021. Over the last 3 years, the royalty paid to Hasbro by D&D Beyond has represented a significant contribution to the fastest growing source of revenue for Dungeons & Dragons. That suggests to me that in the next couple of years, Dungeons & Dragons could become a $1 billion business. That's insane. This strategic acquisition will deliver a direct relationship with fans. There's that direct word, direct relationship with fans, providing valuable data-driven insights to unlock opportunities for new growth in product development. That's awesome. As a data scientist, the fact that they might be buying this just to get access to the data. Wow. Live services and tools as well as regional expansion. Makes sense. Hard to maybe grow D&D in areas where there aren't the populations to support the thing. But if you make it part of a broad international community where someone from, Northern Africa can play with someone from the, Chile can play with someone from Eastern Siberia, that's more people that, can put their money in your pocket. Let's see what Chris Cox said. The acquisition of D&D Beyond will accelerate our progress in both gaming and direct-to-consumer. 2 priority areas of growth for Hasbro, providing immediate access to a loyal, growing player base, says Chris Cox, Hasbro CEO. Hasbro's gaming portfolio is among the largest and most profitable in the industry, and we continue to make strategic investments to grow our brands, including in digital. This is the perfect step for talented blah, blah, blah. Oh, this is the CEO of the guy who sold out. This is a perfect next step for the team. We can't wait to see what the team will do as an integral part of the D&D franchise, and I look forward to investing in more brands and products to serve fandom's 300 million plus global fans. Yada, 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 yada. Industry that represents over $3 billion. This is just Gabletop. All right. Well, the transaction is subject to customary closing conditions and the receipt of certain regulatory approvals and is expected to close during the second or third quarter of 2022. Funded on cash in hand and is expected to be immaterial to revenue or EPS in 2022. So there you go. That is what we have. It's brutal, but it is what it is. They've got to be sitting on what I can only call a literal mountain of cash. There was a comic book from a long time ago where it was like Blizzard. It was some joke about Blizzard executives sitting on a literal mountain of cash. This is definitely the same situation, right? I mean, their costs didn't spire. The D&D's costs have not risen in the last 2 or 3 years, but they've grown 100 and something percent. Like, they must have more money than they know what to do with. And so they're just going to buy stuff up. They're just going to buy stuff up. Oh, boy. Let's see. Question. If Wizards followed through and made an entire or whole ecosystem, would that be good for tabletop role-playing games? I don't know. My experience is biased because the experience that I have, the game that I have the most experience with is Magic the Gathering. And that is a game I was very passionate about and very involved with for a long time. And it was a paper-based game that was all about playing at the table with people, whether it was casually or at a competitive tournament level. Magic the Gathering was actually one of the first games to conclude basically what essentially is an NFT, except it's not really fungible, but digital tokens of ownership in their original online platform, which came out eons ago, called Magic the Gathering Online. But that was always a small part of the gaming infrastructure. It always was. And then, circa 2015 or so, they really started to push Magic the Gathering Arena, which was their digital platform offering. And they basically killed their paper game to increase their digital game. And they made a ton of money for that. But they also basically killed everything that I loved about Magic the Gathering. They killed the collectability of it because on Magic the Gathering Arena, you don't own your cards. It's just part of your digital library. You can't trade them to another player. You certainly can't sell them to someone. They also made it so that the Pro Tour, the competitive spirit, going to tournaments with your friends, shoving four, people into a car and making a late night drive to Milwaukee or Indianapolis and then crashing in a hotel room and trying to, not do your best to scrub out early in a tournament. They got rid of that experience. And everyone complained about it. But then players also said, hey, this is kind of nice. I don't have to spend money on gas in a hotel room to go play in a Magic tournament anymore. I could just play from home. Yeah, but aren't the stakes nothing? I wasn't going to win anyways. I just play for fun. And so the game's design changed too. They stopped designing cards. They stopped designing sets that were as interesting to the more mechanically and competitive-minded player, and they started designing sets that were designed to appeal to the baseline customer, the vast majority, gimmicky stuff. They made a Walking Dead Magic the Gathering set. They made a set copied off of Harry Potter. They literally made a Dungeons and Dragons set, a set which universally is considered by anybody who knows anything about the game to be one of the worst sets that they've ever produced. But it sold well because it said D&D on it. So, yeah. Would it be good for tabletop role-playing games? I don't know. Would it be good for me? Probably not. So, yeah. Kind of stinks. Hasbro up 2% today. Sure, why not? They're about to corner the market. Hopefully it's not a sharp corner, because if it's a sharp corner, your Stone Spirit Scout may have a hard time negotiating that. In before, get a question. I'm going to copy from in before. Get 1 free month of D&D core rulebook subscription with your MTG booster. Why not? Yeah, just Magic already makes more money than D&D. Why not just combine the two? I want to see Derek's outrageous idea. Who knows? I mean, at that point, the sky's the limit. So. So yeah, I mean, it's interesting news. May you live in interesting times. Well, these are very interesting times. William Branch wants to know, can we go play Dungeon World now instead of depressing ourselves with shitty spells and shittier corporate stuff? Dungeon World is a cool game. I do enjoy it. There's a lot of people who would like to see a Dungeon World game get played on this channel. And that very well may be the case. Maybe Dungeon World, maybe Legend of the Five Rings, who knows? We'll see. I think it would be fun. I am a fan. And I think it's a good balance. A game like Dungeon World is a great balance to Pathfinder 2nd Edition, which is, it's very, Matthew McConaughey's character from Wolf of Wall Street. It's all very high frequency, very, a lot of math, a lot of numbers, a lot of up here. It's up here, A game like Dungeon World is slower. You got to get the blood flowing down into the legs, into the trunk of the body. It's a cool game. And it's a very different experience, you know. And I'm sure if I ran Dungeon World, you know, I'll give you a great example. A lot of times when I go to Gen Con, I end up playing a lot. Back in the day, I used to play a lot of Dungeon World because it was a very popular game. And, you know, I'd come home desperate for minis and the grid and tactics because I was kind of just tired of soft moves and hard moves, you know. Hey, thanks for the super chat, Self. Confess Cynic. Mood Swing, have any next AP things to say? Yeah, so we've, you know, we're continuing to iron out the details, but I can say this. It's going to be on Foundry. Okay. We're going to be on Foundry because it makes it easier for us to play more consistently, and it most importantly makes it easier for us to share the Foundry, you know, battle area and maybe like the Foundry log with you, the viewer. And we think overall that that's still very important for our experience. We're not just about entertainment, we're about education. We want people to see how the game is actually played, like for realsies, right? Like, and that means numbers and math and dice and, you know, 5-foot steps or steps and strides and, you know, all the rigmarole that come with that. So that's going to be an important part of the game. Continue to be an important part of the game, I should say. If you participated in our live stream of Wrath of the Runelords, we are basically doing away with all of the house rules from Rise of the Runelords. There's going to be no stamina rules, no resolve points. We're going to be using straight ordinary hit points. There's going to be no Derek hero points, which supercharge things. Now, part of this isn't just because part of it's just because I want to do something different, but also part of it has to do with the tone of the game. Rise of the Runelords is about a group of heroes rising to the very heights of power, literally level 20, to confront what essentially is a nascent god upon his return to the world and against a literal army of giants. This is larger than like life, big hero stuff, you know, big damn hero stuff. The stakes are a lot less in the Quest for the Frozen Flame. It's set in a more robust, well, not robust. It's set in a more rustic and simpler area of Golarion, and it's also just a 1 to 10 AP. So I think the feel of the game is different. So we are going to be using, we're not going to be using Derek hero points. We are going to use free archetype because we still think that that is a fun way to add some diversity and some complexity and some fun to the characters. But it's going to be really important to me that they are tied into the characters' backgrounds. It's not just something that they're taking just for build purposes or car op purposes. And yeah, let me think. We're going to be playing every other week, not weekly. We are going to use those odd weeks or even weeks either to do additional live streams with me, or if we can, you know, get the game together, we can get the players together, maybe do some other types of games that aren't Pathfinder and not D&D 5th edition either, right? Something without a D20, or at least not what a fantasy sword and spell D20 based game, right? Something like maybe it's a fantasy game, but it's Dungeon World because it's powered by the apocalypse. Maybe it is a D20, but maybe it's mutants and masterminds, right? Something that, you know, feels different, plays different, and looks different on the screen. So we definitely want to do that. Let me see here. Question. How full nerd are you going in Foundry? Your basic array of quality of life mods or running the full gamut of crazy awesome macros and such? I have sort of a balanced approach. I definitely do not run... I don't want to code JavaScript in order to run the game, and I am not a big fan of all the bells and whistles of, you know, I made an automated trap, and so if someone steps on it, it pauses the game, and then it... I have a real problem, actually, with virtual tabletops. I really appreciate what they do for the hobby. They allow me to play with my friends, including ones who don't live around here, and that's going to be very valuable to me. And it also allows me to easily and quickly share with you, the viewer at home, what is going on in our battle mat, so we can all kind of appreciate the tactics and the craziness of the combat the same. But I also feel like when people see a Foundry tabletop, when people include all of these crazy awesome macros, it really does make the game start to feel and look like a bad video game. And I think people start to treat it like a bad video game. And it quickly becomes a version of auto chess or something like that. And that is not something that I appreciate. And I think that's always been true. But like when your battle mats used to just be Chessex mats, which was just, wet erase graph paper on a vinyl mat, and you were just sketching a 30-foot by 30-foot room and drawing a little squiggle for a door and maybe a little circle for a pillar. There's not a lot there contextually. And, the player's mind fills in those gaps. They're not going to look at that and think, oh, that is what it really looks like. No, of course it doesn't really look like that. Their mind will fill in the detail and they'll remember it. They'll chew on that scenery a little bit more. But some of these Foundry maps are beautiful, especially if you include all that animated stuff. And the player's imagination just doesn't have to do anything. And so instead of living up in here, right, it lives here. It lives on the screen. It lives underneath the cursor of their mouse. It's removed from them in a way. And that for me is like the single greatest sin of the virtual tabletop. Question from Silverwolf. Do you think that there are creative people at WotC proposing a more narrative system for D&D to reflect how the game is being played? Yes. I don't know if they're going to get their way. I don't think they want to kill the golden goose. D&D has learned that if you change anything, the audience will hate you. And, if it's not broke, don't fix it. If it's not broke, don't fix it. Why risk taking a dungeon combat simulation game, which everyone is using to tell narrative stories with, and risk adding narrative combats to it? You don't have to do anything. People are already just using the game in a way that it was never designed to be used, so just let them. And they're buying it. And they're buying it in greater numbers than they ever have before. When your opponent's making a mistake, let them. Well, when your customer is buying something, let them. Don't change it up. It's like the Pepsi thing or Coke, new Coke in the 80s. Coke was number one. Coke, why did you come out with new Coke? It was dumb. You were already number one. They're not going to change anything. Let's see. Free archetype MVP says throwaway. First level free archetype? Yeah, probably. If it's part of a character's background, I almost always think that you should do a first level archetype because otherwise it doesn't make any sense. Oh yeah, my character was raised on ships and he was always around water, and turns out his father was a kind of a scallywag, and he grew up on pirate ships, and he's a pirate. And at level 1, you're just not a pirate at all. And then at level 2, suddenly you gain all these pirate abilities. You're like, it doesn't even make sense. So, yeah, first level. Actually, if we're talking, I won't, because part of the allure of playing Pathfinder 2 with people like you is that it's easier if the audience understands our game if we don't change that much about the game. There's some really hardcore, cool rules that have been developed by certain members of our Patreon that I would love to, I'd love to kick the tires on and take it for a spin. But unfortunately, I don't want to change too much. We had a lot of problems with our last AP with people. I still get comments from people who are just now starting Rise of the Rune Lords. So they're like way back at episode 2 or 3, and they go, hey, what are your rules? I don't quite follow. And so we definitely want to, minimize that in terms of the rules that we change. But one of the things that I do want to change, and if Knights of the Last Call ever gets to a world or a place where we are starting to produce actual, written content, game supplements and products, one of the things I'd like to do is to take a stab at changing around the entire free archetype paradigm and basically, creating a system that is optional, but not really optional because everybody uses it, and changing it to work on a 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, yada, yada, yada progression. Because I think it's cooler as a player if you would go back and forth between, for example, if you're that way, if you're a martial character, you're going to get 2 feats at level 1. That's cool. But if you're a caster, at least you get that dedication feat at level 1. Then everybody would get their normal class feat at level 2, and then you would get your archetype feat at level 3, and then you would get a class feat at 4 and an archetype at 5 and a class feat at, and that way you're getting a class feat, whether it's a class feat or an archetype feat, but archetype feats are basically like class feats because you can use classes for archetypes. But instead of getting 2 0 2 0 2 0, you would get 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1. I think that flows a lot better, and I really like that. So free archetype is 100% way to go. I own several versions of Traveler. I own the original Traveler. I own the Mongoose Traveler. I love life paths, but I've always been weird about sci-fi games, Brutus the Cat, and it's never been a genre. My group of friends that I've been playing D&D and RPGs with for 20 plus years, huge sci-fi nerds, huge. Star Trek, Star Wars, Stargate, Firefly, Battlestar Galactica, Expand. I mean, basically every sci-fi show that comes out we love, but it's never been a game. It's never been a genre that we have really explored through role-playing games that heavily. So it's interesting the way it comes out. Have y'all officially confirmed what AP you will be playing? Yes, we are officially playing Quest for the Frozen Flame. How close to as written are you planning to run it? So Self-Confessed Cynic is a member of our Patreon. Vin is his name. Joins us from Australia. And he is a hero tier, and I saw that he was engaged in a conversation about this today. I'm going to get right back to that and say, Brutus, the only sci-fi game that we have ever played as with my sort of native home group has been Scum and Villainy. I really like the Blades in the Dark system, so that's awesome. Everybody was a huge Firefly fan, so we use that. Do I have it right here? It's right here. Woo-doo! Scum and Villainy by Stras Asimovich. And that is the only one that we've actually really played. So that's actually kind of funny that you say that. So the question is, if you're familiar with Rise of the Rune Lords, the actual adventure path, then you know that I cut out a lot from that game. Because the Rise of the Rune Lords adventure path was written for first edition Pathfinder, and it was written assuming that you needed to level up. So it was chock full of just countless, endless battles that were designed to just pad the XP totals so that the players will be at a certain level at a certain time to level up. And so I cut out a lot of these extraneous encounters. My hope is, full disclosure, Paizo sent me Quest for the Frozen Flame for free. I still have to get the second and the third ones. So I'm going to read through the second and the third issue before I make this decision to see what is the pacing like, what are the encounters, how optional are they? It's still an AP, so there are problems that I have with all APs, but I want to see how loosey-goosey I can play with it. One of the reasons I agreed to play it is because through reading the first adventure, I felt like there was enough room for me to play with the space a little bit. And that being the case, if they do a good job writing it, and it is specifically written for Pathfinder 2, there will probably be less of a reason or a need for me to cancel or remove encounters. Now, if the group does something, I'm never going to force an encounter down any group's throat, whether the AP tells me to or not. I don't care if it's the final boss. If the group does something, player agency will never get trumped in my game. So, very important to me. So hopefully that answers the question. Let's see. Yeah. So let me know, but that is kind of the case. The problem with this, Anthony, is there are problems. I've looked at that, and that does create problems. I think that was one of my mistakes in running Rise of the Rune Lords is not cutting some of the filler encounters. Yeah. It's chock full of them. And you look at this encounter and you go, what does this encounter even do? Will you be scaling the official maps? Almost assuredly. Okay, well, number one, we are going to do a session 0, and we are going to do it live. But that doesn't mean that the players aren't thinking about character ideas. So we have a problem, right? Well, the problem is that the game is the realm of the Mammoth Lord. And what is a Mammoth Lord? Well, a Mammoth Lord is someone in the realm of the Mammoth Lord who is treated with utmost respect and is almost like a chieftain. And they are a person who has managed to tame and ride one of the great mammoths of the lands. Well, guess what? Mammoth is now an animal companion. And rather than being this huge, awesome, prehistoric elephant thing, it's Pathfinder 2 animal companion. So it's just large. And even if you make it mature, even if you make it savage or an incredible animal companion, it will never be anything but large. But technically it's a mammoth, and technically a level 1 character with Beastmaster archetype can start with a mammoth. So theoretically, every player could start as a Beastmaster and start technically as a Mammoth Lord because they have trained and ridden a mammoth. And the idea that they are babies is almost more horrifying because it means that you're, taking these creatures into battle. Now, Todd, I would agree with you that that makes sense, except that when the group gets to level 6 and they take mature animal companion with their Beastmaster archetype and the creature becomes mature, they're no longer babies, right? But they don't get any bigger because Pathfinder 2, the animal companions never get bigger than a horse. So even though the woolly mammoth is now mature, it's not huge. It's still large. It's very strange. Very weird. Yeah, and so it's just this, it's Pathfinder. Let's talk. Why not just make it that you just can't take an elephant as an animal companion until the players are higher level? Make it not available at level 1. Make it so that they have to be level 7 or something, or level 6 or something. That would be cool. I would be down for that. I think everybody else would be down for that. Instead, they take all these cool monsters or animals and they shrink them down. It's kind of crazy. Boothby. No, that is exactly the problem. You're thinking like a piezo designer, and that might be a compliment if that is what you're interested in. No, if they're huge, damn it. They are crushing people under their feet. That's why the Mammoth Lords are awesome. That's why when you get to ride one of these things, you become a king or a queen among men in the realm of the Mammoth Lords. So I don't know. We'll see how it all plays out. Thank you for the super chat, Self-Confessed Cynic, with a live session 0. Yeah, yep, we're gonna be doing live. Probably gonna put some have some fun in there. It's not just to be character creation. I'm also probably gonna use some of my little tools that I have in order to kind of create some interesting connections, some live background creation between the players to kind of give them some fun things to play off. One of my goals with this next campaign, which I have stated to my player group, is I do want to see some more fully developed characters. I would like to see some more interesting decision making from the players, what some people would call role playing. I'm not going to force people to wear costumes or speak in an accent, but I'm saying I want the game to have a little bit more meat, a little bit more depth to it. It's a shorter game, so I feel like I'm not going to feel as time crunched. With Rise of the Rune Lords, knowing that there was a full 20 levels ahead of me, I frequently felt somewhat compelled to, get the let out, to move things along. So, yeah. That's right, Anthony. You start as a Mammoth Lord. That's right. Little Mammoth Lords. Baby Mammoth Lords. Mammoth Lord. Growth stunted due to combat trauma. Very sad. Yeah. So. Are you not embarrassed? Right. And you're like, well, technically, according to the laws of our land, I am a Mammoth Lord. You're like, that's not a technicality. You literally took the runt of the pack, and then you claimed it. Yes, absolutely, Self-Confessed Cynic. Actually, I told him today that he was a crazy person, but Tim was being like, hey, do you think we should put a goal out there for tips or something for me to get a Knights of Last Call tattoo? I told him that was crazy and that he is a crazy person, but Tim was literally willing to allow a tip goal for him to get a KOLC, like legit KOLC tattoo on his body. Listen, we don't have the Wheel of Pain anymore, okay? We don't have the Wheel of Destiny. We don't have buy a hero point on demand, okay? We got to come up with something else. That Rise of the Rune Lord AP and all those wheels, y'all might have hated it, and it might have destroyed a campaign, but it was paying the bills, let me tell you, okay? You all really wanted to see people kick ass with hero points or get crushed under the grinding wheels of pain. Either way, it was fantastic for the channel. And we had all these really great ideas that we were planning on enacting because we suddenly had this huge source of income. And then, well, everybody died. So that ended. And, you know, we have some integrity, so we're not going to just keep going back to the well. That's not class, you know, and we have class. We have some class. All right. Well, we're coming up on 10 o'clock here. Sean, Tim may have been thinking about getting a tattoo anyways, but I very, very, very much doubt he was thinking of getting this tattoo. So, let's see. William Brandis says, quickly, Bard, use your music to inspire horrific visions into our foes. Champion, use your skill to aid me in battle. Damn it, you've made me worse. I'll have to puke to have a chance of hitting this. I've got a tattoo of Tim with a tattoo of KLC on his arm, on my arm. That's nice. That's correct. You thought, I'm sorry. That was before you joined. That was our sticker giveaway. They weren't supposed to be tattoos. Sorry. Yeah, we can make them Mammoth Viscounts. Mammoth Marquis de Mammoth. Question: are you going to run a Northern Reaches game? That's a good question, Anthony. As an overlord, I have the ability to run a game. Full answer. Number one. If we got to a place where we had so many players who were demanding a game to be played and we didn't have enough GMs to routinely fill those slots, I'm okay with players having to wait a little bit and not literally be able to. It's not a World of Warcraft server, right? Like, I'm not expecting that a player wakes up at 4 a.m. and goes, I want to play Pathfinder 2 now, and then like complains to me that there isn't a Pathfinder 2 game running at that exact minute. No, we're not doing that. But if we get to the point where we suddenly have maybe 8 groups worth of players, but only 5 or 6 DMs to run in that time frame, there might be a pressing need for me to create some elements so that we can relieve the players. Right? I want to make sure the players get to play who've signed up for the game. So certainly, as the needs be, I will fill it in. The second thing, which I will admit also is unfair. I'm not trying to. This is not a vanity play. Not like I'm not Matt Mercer, okay? I'm a schlub. But if I did run a game, if I opened up a dungeon, I imagine that there would be a lot of people who would want to play in it. And I'm not trying to say like it's a super special occasion, but there might be some people who want to play with Derek, okay? There might be some people who want to play with Bob, right? Or Smith. And so then I worry about like how to make it fair. And, you know, if you just make it first come, first serve, I guess you could do it that way. You know, honestly, if I ever ran a game, it would probably be at some really weird time to like really help out like our European or our East Pacific groups to make sure that they get enough games going on. But, you know, I would. And, you know, and Aaron and I have both talked Smith and I have both talked that seeing everybody play and seeing everybody talk about the game and seeing some of the designs and some of the things that people are building, you know, have made us, you know, been like, oh man, we kind of want to play because that sounds like that'd be fun. All right. It's Thursday night and we are down to just our last 20 people in here. Oh, 18. So we were at a high of 40, so we've lost half of us. So those of you who are still remaining, thank you for sitting in. But I am going to wrap up. It is getting close to 10 o'clock here. Let me find my outro music. There we go. Again, I want to say thank you to everybody. I want you to enjoy your weekend. I want you to enjoy your Easter if that is something that you celebrate. And if it's just time that you spend with your family, well, then enjoy that as well. Be safe out there. COVID is on the decline, but, it's still a nasty disease, and we should respect it for that. I do want to say thank you to our patrons, squires, heroes, but especially our champions and squires and knights, but especially our champions and our heroes, who really contribute a ton of money to this channel, and their support is really, really appreciated. And there's not enough I could do to say thank you to them. And for anybody who tipped tonight, or even if you just participate and ask a great question, but if you decided to contribute a little cash flow, I want to say, from me personally, thank you. It's a very strong vote of confidence. I get a lot of negative press. I mean, I suppose anybody being in the YouTube realm does. So it's nice to know when people appreciate you. And but also, it helps the channel out a lot. These live streams and our patrons are what pay the bills. Okay? If you join the Patreon, you'll see that I basically share all the financials of this channel. We make almost nothing from YouTube. It all comes from tips, and it all comes from the patrons. So, emojis. Well, I am going to let the heroes basically pick the emojis, Vin. So, we'll figure out what those 4 emojis are going to be. But coming soon, we are going to have YouTube memberships. So if you want to support us on YouTube as well, as I'd prefer that you join the Patreon. But if you want to join both, or you only want to join through YouTube, well, then we are going to be including YouTube memberships, which will give people the ability to use custom emojis in the chat, along with badges indicating how long you have been a supporter of the Knights of Last Call. So that is coming hopefully soon. I have to figure out what the emojis are. I'm going to let some of the heroes decide what they are going to be. And then I'll submit that to YouTube, and we'll get that up, hopefully. Hopefully they submit it, and they can answer it pretty quick. So, throwaway. Thank you. I appreciate it. You did it. That's amazing. You really did it. Hold on one second. I'm trying to trigger something so that it works. All right. That is incredible, and I want to say thank you for that. And very, 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 very. Don't worry, I just adjusted it for you to make it look like 100. So you are all good there. Thank you, Throwaway. That is very generous of you, especially with those loonies and toonies. It must be difficult, up there in the TO. I think you're from Toronto, but you'll correct me. Anthony, it's harder than you think. This community is incredibly generous. They always have been, and they always will be. So thank you, Throwaway. Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Jason Bullman, who's always in here giving us nice tips. Thank you, Self-Confessed Cynic. Thank you, Damian Williams. Thank you, GM Scott. And thank you to everybody else who may have tipped and I missed. But and thank you, Throwaway, for that final chat to put us where we needed to be. Thank you very much to everybody. And we'll see you next time on Knights of Last Call.